Welcome back to Boundless Books. Today, we begin the thrilling conclusion to the Hunger Games trilogy with Mockingjay by Suzanne Collins. After surviving two brutal Hunger Games arenas, Katniss Everdeen is no longer just a tribute from District 12, she has become the symbol of hope and rebellion for all of Panem. But the capital's control is stronger and more dangerous than ever, and war is about to consume the nation. As the story begins, District 12 has been completely destroyed by the capital after the events of Catching Fire. Katniss returns to the ashes of her former home and sees burned buildings, empty streets, and memories reduced to rubble. The destruction leaves her emotionally broken, realizing that nothing in Panem will ever return to normal. Although some survivors escaped, thousands lost their lives, showing the terrifying power of the capital's revenge. Katniss is secretly taken to District 13, a place many people believed had been destroyed years ago. Hidden underground, District 13 has survived in secrecy while building military strength and preparing for rebellion. Life there is strict, controlled, and heavily scheduled, very different from the freedom Katniss once knew in District 12. The leaders of District 13, especially President Coin, see Katniss as more than just a survivor. They want her to become the Mockingjay, the symbol that can unite the districts against the capital. However, Katniss struggles with this responsibility. She is emotionally exhausted, traumatized by the games, and deeply worried about Peeta Mellark, who has been captured by the capital. Peeta's televised appearances become one of the emotional centers of the story, as the capital uses him for propaganda to weaken the rebellion and manipulate Katniss emotionally. His suffering constantly reminds Katniss that war affects not only soldiers but innocent people as well. Meanwhile, rebellion begins spreading throughout Panem. Districts that once feared the capital now rise in defiance. Rebels destroy supply lines, attack peacekeepers, and spread the Mockingjay symbol as a sign of resistance. Katniss slowly realizes that her actions in the arena inspired people to fight back. Even small acts of defiance from the earlier books have now grown into a full revolution. One of the major themes in Mockingjay is propaganda and media manipulation. Both the capital and District 13 use television broadcasts to influence the people of Panem. Katniss becomes the star of rebel propaganda videos called Propo, where she delivers emotional speeches meant to inspire hope. The story explores how leaders use media during war and how truth can become blurred by politics and power. Another important theme is trauma and emotional survival. Unlike many dystopian stories that focus mainly on action, Mockingjay spends a great deal of time showing the psychological damage caused by violence and war. Katniss suffers from fear, nightmares, guilt, and emotional confusion. Other characters like Finnick Odair, Haymitch Abernathy, and Johanna Mason also struggle with trauma from the games and the rebellion. This makes the story darker and more realistic than the earlier books. The relationships between characters also become more complicated. Katniss feels torn between Gale Hawthorne and Peeta as both represent different paths in her life. Gale becomes more aggressive and focused on defeating the capital through force, while Peeta represents compassion and humanity even during terrible circumstances. Katniss must decide not only who she trusts, but also what kind of future she wants for herself and Panem. As the rebellion grows stronger, the capital becomes even more ruthless. Dangerous traps, brutal attacks, and emotional manipulation create constant tension throughout the story. The journey toward the capital turns into a deadly mission where survival is never guaranteed. The closer Katniss gets to the center of power, the more she realizes that war changes everyone involved. Key moments in the introduction include District 12 destroyed after the Quarter Quell, Katniss arriving in District 13, President Coin introducing the rebellion plans, Katniss becoming the Mockingjay symbol, Peeta being used in capital propaganda, rebellion spreading across Panem. Themes of war, trauma, sacrifice, and political manipulation. Differences between the book and the movie. The book provides deeper insight into Katniss's emotional trauma and thoughts. District 13's strict lifestyle is explained in greater detail in the novel. The propaganda and political themes are more detailed in the book version. Several emotional character moments are shortened or simplified in the films. Conclusion: Mockingjay transforms Katniss Everdeen from a survivor into the face of an entire revolution. The story is darker, more emotional, and far more political than the earlier books, exploring the true cost of war and the sacrifices required for freedom. As Panem moves toward its final battle, Katniss must decide what kind of symbol she truly wants to become. That wraps up our introduction to Mockingjay. Are you ready to join the rebellion and explore the final journey of Katniss Everdeen? Let us know your favorite Hunger Games moment in the comments below, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and share for more chapter breakdowns from Boundless Books. Welcome back to Boundless Books. Welcome back to Boundless Books. Today, we're diving into Chapter 1 of Mockingjay, the third book in the Hunger Games trilogy by Suzanne Collins, author of the Hunger Games series, titled The Ruins of District 12. This opening chapter immediately sets a darker and more emotional tone for the final installment of the series. Katniss Everdeen returns to what remains of her home after the devastating destruction of District 12 by the Capitol. The chapter explores grief, trauma, survival, and the beginning of open rebellion against President Snow. The story begins with Katniss Everdeen traveling back to District 12 aboard a hovercraft from District 13. Ever since the events of the Quarter Quell, Katniss has been living underground in District 13, recovering physically and emotionally from the arena. However, she feels disconnected and restless. The destruction of her home continues to haunt her, and she decides to return to District 12 for the first time since it was bombed by the Capitol. As Katniss walks through the remains of District 12, the devastation is overwhelming. Entire neighborhoods have been reduced to ashes and rubble. The once busy streets are silent except for the wind. Homes, shops, and familiar landmarks are destroyed beyond recognition. Katniss reflects on how thousands of people lost their lives during the bombing. Only a small number of citizens survived because District 13 managed to rescue them in time. Katniss's emotions grow heavier as she walks through the ruins of the scene where she lived with her mother in Prim. She remembers happier moments from her childhood, including hunting trips with Gale and caring for her family after her father's death. The memories contrast painfully with the destruction surrounding her. One of the few structures still standing is the Victor's Village. Since the houses were built differently and located farther from the main district, they survived the attack. Katniss enters her old home and notices how empty and lifeless it feels. Dust covers the furniture, and signs of abandonment are everywhere. The silence makes the house feel almost haunted. Inside the house, Katniss discovers Buttercup, Prim's cat, still alive despite the destruction. At first, she reacts angrily because Buttercup reminds her of Prim and everything she fears losing. However, she eventually feeds the starving cat and allows him to stay with her. This emotional moment reveals Katniss's hidden vulnerability and how deeply she misses her sister. Katniss also discovers a white rose left behind in her house. She immediately recognizes it as President Snow's signature symbol. The rose terrifies her because it proves Snow has been inside her home and is still threatening her psychologically. The scent of the rose reminds Katniss of blood and danger. This discovery confirms that even after the arena, Snow continues to manipulate and intimidate her. Throughout the chapter, Katniss struggles with nightmares and emotional exhaustion. She feels trapped between being a survivor and becoming a symbol of rebellion. District 13 wants her to become the Mockingjay, the face of the uprising against the Capitol, but Katniss is uncertain whether she can handle the responsibility. The chapter ends with Katniss reflecting on the ashes of her old life. District 12 is gone, but the memories remain alive inside her. The destruction strengthens the reality that Panem is now fully at war, and there is no returning to the life she once knew. Key moments in the chapter include: Katniss returns to District 12. Katniss visits the destroyed remains of her home district for the first time since the Capitol bombing. The devastation of District 12, entire streets and buildings are reduced to ashes, showing the Capitol's brutality. Memories of the scene: Katniss reflects on her childhood, her father, and hunting with Gale. Victor's Village still standing. Katniss discovers that the Victor's Village survived the destruction. Buttercup survives. Prim's cat is found alive inside Katniss's old house. President Snow's white rose. Katniss finds a white rose left by Snow, reminding her that he is still threatening her. The beginning of open rebellion. The chapter establishes the emotional and political stakes of the war against the Capitol. Differences between the book and the movie. In the book, Katniss spends more time reflecting on the destruction of District 12 and her emotional trauma, while the movie moves through these scenes more quickly. The novel gives deeper insight into Katniss's thoughts about Prim, Gale, and her memories of growing up in the scene. Buttercup's appearance is more emotionally detailed in the book, showing Katniss's conflicted feelings more clearly. The White Rose scene carries stronger psychological tension in the novel because readers experience Katniss's internal fear directly. The book emphasizes Katniss's uncertainty about becoming the Mockingjay more strongly than the film adaptation. Chapter 1 of Mockingjay, The Ruins of District 12, serves as a powerful and emotional beginning to the final book in the Hunger Games trilogy. The chapter highlights the devastating cost of war and the emotional scars left behind by the Capitol's cruelty. Katniss is no longer simply a tribute trying to survive an arena, she is now standing in the middle of a rebellion that could change Panem forever. The destruction of District 12 symbolizes the end of Katniss's old life and the beginning of a much larger conflict. At the same time, the appearance of President Snow's White Rose reminds readers that the Capitol's influence and threats are far from over. What did you think about Katniss returning to District 12 for the first time? Did the White Rose scene give you chills? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and join us next time on Boundless Books as we continue exploring Mockingjay. Welcome back to Boundless Books. Today, we're diving into Chapter 2 of Mockingjay, titled The Survivors. This chapter takes us deeper into the hidden world of District 13 as Katniss struggles with trauma, loss, and the growing rebellion against the Capitol. We also begin to understand how much Panem has changed since the Quarter Quell and how Katniss is becoming the center of a revolution she never intended to lead. Katniss wakes up in the underground world of District 13, still emotionally shattered after learning that District 12 has been destroyed. The memories of fire, ash, and destruction haunt her constantly. She struggles to accept the fact that almost everyone she knew back home is gone. As she moves through the strict corridors of District 13, Katniss notices how different life is here compared to the other districts. Everything is controlled by schedules. People eat, work, sleep, and exercise according to exact timings. Even clothing is standardized. The district feels less like a home and more like a military base preparing for war. Katniss learns more about President Coin, the leader of District 13. Coin appears calm and disciplined, but Katniss immediately senses that she is calculating and powerful. District 13 survived underground for years after supposedly being destroyed during the Dark Days, and now it has become the center of the rebellion against the Capitol. While exploring the district, Katniss sees survivors from District 12. The sight of familiar faces brings both relief and sadness. She realizes how few people escaped before the bombing. Greasy Sae and several others managed to survive because Gale helped lead them to safety. Katniss feels grateful toward Gale, knowing he saved many lives while she was trapped in the arena. One of the most emotional moments comes when Katniss discovers Buttercup, Prim's cat, is alive. Although she normally dislikes the cat, seeing him reminds her of Prim and the life she lost. The moment shows how deeply Katniss misses her sister and fears losing her forever. Katniss also learns more about the rebellion spreading across Panem. Districts are beginning to rise against the Capitol, inspired partly by Katniss's actions in the arena when she destroyed the force field. Though she never meant to become a revolutionary symbol, people now see her as the Mockingjay, the face of hope and resistance. However, Katniss is deeply conflicted. She is still traumatized from the games and furious that Peeta was captured by the Capitol while she was rescued. The guilt eats away at her constantly. She feels powerless knowing Snow can use Peeta against the rebellion at any moment. Later, Katniss visits the hospital area of District 13, where she witnesses wounded refugees and exhausted medical workers. The reality of war becomes impossible to ignore. These aren't just rumors anymore, Panem is truly at war. At the end of the chapter, Katniss begins to realize that everyone around her expects something from her. The rebels want her to become the Mockingjay officially and inspire the districts to fight. But Katniss isn't sure she can handle the pressure, especially while dealing with her own emotional pain. The chapter closes with Katniss trapped between two identities, a frightened survivor and the symbol of an uprising. Key moments in the chapter include: Katniss adjusts to life in District 13, she discovers the district operates under strict military discipline and constant schedules. The truth about District 13 is revealed. Katniss realizes the district secretly survived underground for years. Katniss sees survivors from District 12. The small number of survivors highlights the scale of the Capitol's destruction. Gale is praised for rescuing people. Katniss learns how Gale saved many lives during the bombing. Buttercup survives. The return of Prim's cat creates an emotional connection to Katniss's lost home. The rebellion grows stronger. districts across Panem are beginning to resist the capital openly. Katniss struggles with guilt over Peeta. She cannot stop thinking about Peeta being trapped in the capital. The idea of the Mockingjay emerges. Rebels begin viewing Katniss as the symbol of their revolution. Differences between the book and the movie. The book spends much more time exploring Katniss's mental trauma and depression after the destruction of District 12. District 13's strict schedules and military structure are explained in far greater detail in the novel. Katniss's emotional attachment to Buttercup is developed more deeply in the book. The movie focuses more on the rebellion's action elements, while the chapter emphasizes Katniss's psychological struggle. Gale's rescue efforts are discussed more thoroughly in the novel, making his heroism feel more significant. That wraps up Chapter 2, The Survivors. This chapter shifts the story from survival in the arena to survival during war. Katniss is no longer just fighting for herself, she's becoming the symbol of an entire rebellion. But with Peeta captured, District 12 destroyed, and Panem on the edge of revolution, the pressure on her is greater than ever. What do you think? Was District 13 truly a place of hope, or just another form of control? Let us know in the comments below, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and join us next time on Boundless Books for Chapter 3 of Mockingjay. Welcome back to Boundless Books. Today, we're diving into Chapter 3 of Mockingjay, titled The Victors. This chapter explores the emotional devastation left behind after the destruction of District 12, while Katniss struggles with grief, guilt, and the growing expectations placed upon her as the Mockingjay. As she walks through the ashes of her old life, shocking discoveries and painful memories remind her that nothing will ever be the same again. Katniss returns to the ruins of District 12 with a small team from District 13. The once busy district is now nothing more than ashes, collapsed buildings, and silence. The destruction caused by the capital is overwhelming, and Katniss is forced to confront the reality that her home no longer exists. As she walks through the remains of the district, Katniss notices familiar landmarks that have been completely destroyed. The homes, shops, and streets that once held memories are now burned shells. The emptiness makes her feel isolated and guilty for surviving when so many others did not. Katniss eventually makes her way toward Victor's village, the area where past Hunger Games winners lived. Unlike the rest of District 12, the houses there remain mostly untouched because they were built for the victors and symbolized capital power. Seeing the perfectly preserved houses surrounded by destruction feels eerie and unnatural. She enters her old house and is overwhelmed by memories of her family, Peeta, and the life she once had. The quietness inside the house makes the loss even more painful. Katniss reflects on how quickly everything changed after the Quarter Quell and how impossible it feels to return to normal. While exploring the house, Katniss discovers that someone has recently been there. She becomes cautious and realizes that it is likely Gale. Soon after, she encounters him, and the reunion is emotional. Gale explains how he managed to save many people from District 12 during the Capitol bombing. His bravery and leadership saved hundreds of lives, including Katniss's mother and Prim. Katniss feels grateful but also heartbroken listening to Gale describe the destruction. He tells her how the Capitol firebombed the district without mercy, leaving almost nothing behind. Their conversation reminds Katniss that the rebellion is no longer just political, it is deeply personal. Before leaving, Katniss visits the remains of her old home in the scene. Among the ashes, she finds Buttercup, Prim's cat, alive but starving. Though Katniss once disliked the cat, seeing him survive reminds her of Prim and fills her with emotion. She decides to take Buttercup back with her, symbolizing her determination to hold on to whatever pieces of her old life remain. The chapter ends with Katniss realizing how much the capital has taken from her. The destruction of District 12 strengthens her anger and slowly pushes her closer toward accepting her role as the Mockingjay. Key moments in the chapter include: Katniss returns to District 12, she witnesses the horrifying destruction left by the capital. Victor's village remains untouched, the preserved houses create a haunting contrast with the ruined district. Katniss reunites with Gale. Gale explains how he rescued many survivors during the bombing. The truth about District 12's destruction. Katniss learns more about the capital's cruelty and revenge. Buttercup survives. Prim's cat becomes an emotional reminder of family and hope. Katniss grows closer to becoming the Mockingjay. The devastation deepens her hatred for the capital. Differences between the book and the movie. In the book, Katniss spends more time exploring the ruins of District 12, giving readers a stronger emotional connection to her memories. The novel provides deeper insight into Katniss's guilt and trauma after surviving while others died. Buttercup's discovery is more emotional in the book, emphasizing Katniss's connection to Prim. Gale's explanation of the bombing and rescue efforts is more detailed in the novel than in the movie adaptation. The atmosphere of silence and destruction is described more vividly in the book, making District 12 feel even more haunting. Chapter 3, The Victors, is one of the most emotional chapters in Mockingjay so far. Katniss is forced to face the complete destruction of her home and the painful reality of war. Through the ruins of District 12, Suzanne Collins shows how rebellion comes with devastating loss. At the same time, moments like Gale's bravery and Buttercup's survival remind us that hope can still exist even after tragedy. What do you think affected Katniss the most in this chapter, the destruction of District 12 or finding Buttercup alive? Let us know in the comments below, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and join us next time on Boundless Books for Chapter 4 of Mockingjay. Welcome back to Boundless Books. Today, we're diving into Chapter 4 of Mockingjay, titled The Proposal. This chapter takes us deeper into the emotional consequences of war as Katniss returns to the ruins of District 12 and is faced with a powerful offer that could change the future of Panem forever. Let's explore the grief, anger, and responsibility that shaped this important chapter. The chapter begins with Katniss struggling to process everything she has seen since arriving in District 13. The underground district feels cold, controlled, and emotionally distant compared to the warmth of District 12. Although the people of District 13 treat her as an important figure, Katniss still feels trapped and uncertain about her role in the growing rebellion. Katniss is eventually taken back to the remains of District 12. As she walks through the destroyed streets, she is overwhelmed by shock and sadness. Almost everything she once knew is gone. Homes are reduced to ashes, shops are destroyed, and the entire district feels lifeless. The silence is haunting because the place that once held memories of family, friendship, and survival has become nothing more than a graveyard. The destruction forces Katniss to confront the true cruelty of the capital. President Snow did not simply punish District 12, he erased it. The devastation fills Katniss with anger, grief, and guilt. She remembers the people who once lived there and realizes how many innocent lives were lost because of the rebellion and her actions during the games. While exploring the ruins, Katniss reflects on how much her life has changed. She thinks about Prim, Gale, Peeta, and the dangerous political situation unfolding across Panem. She especially worries about Peeta, who remains trapped in the capital. The uncertainty surrounding his safety continues to weigh heavily on her mind. Gale accompanies Katniss through parts of District 12 and helps her emotionally survive the experience. Unlike Katniss, Gale's anger toward the capital is more focused and direct. He sees the destruction as proof that rebellion is necessary. His determination contrasts with Katniss' uncertainty, highlighting how differently the two characters react to trauma. After returning to District 13, Katniss meets with President Coin and other rebellion leaders. They explain that the rebellion needs a symbol, someone who can inspire the districts to rise against the capital. They want Katniss to become the Mockingjay, the living face of the rebellion. The proposal places enormous pressure on Katniss. Although she understands why the rebels chose her, she does not see herself as a hero. Katniss has always acted out of survival and love for her family rather than political ambition. The idea of becoming a propaganda figure makes her uncomfortable because she dislikes being controlled or used. President Coin presents the role in a calm and strategic way, but Katniss senses that politics are involved. Coin understands the power of symbols and public emotion. The rebellion believes that Katniss' actions during the Hunger Games already inspired hope among the districts, especially when she honored Rue and challenged the capital publicly. Katniss struggles with the decision because she fears losing herself in the rebellion's plans. She also worries about becoming another tool for powerful leaders, much like tributes are manipulated during the games. However, she cannot ignore the suffering caused by the capital or the possibility that she could help bring change. Throughout the chapter, Suzanne Collins explores themes of propaganda, leadership, grief, and personal identity. Katniss is caught between her desire for freedom and the expectations placed upon her by both the capital and the rebellion. This conflict becomes one of the most important emotional struggles in Mockingjay. The chapter ends with Katniss still uncertain about accepting the role of the Mockingjay. However, the proposal marks a turning point in the story because it transforms the rebellion from a hidden resistance movement into something larger and more public. Katniss must now decide whether she is willing to become the symbol that Panem desperately needs. Key moments in the chapter include: Katniss returns to the destroyed ruins of District 12. The emotional impact of seeing her former home destroyed. Gale's growing anger toward the Capitol. President Coin introduces the Mockingjay proposal. Katniss struggles with the responsibility of becoming a symbol. The rebellion's plans begin taking shape. Differences between the book and the movie. The book spends more time describing Katniss' emotional reactions while walking through District 12. Katniss' inner thoughts and trauma are explored more deeply in the novel. The movie shortens several reflective scenes for pacing. President Coin appears more politically calculating in the book. Gale's emotional responses are given greater detail in the novel, that wraps up Chapter 4, The Proposal. This chapter marks a major turning point in Mockingjay as Katniss begins facing the reality of becoming the symbol of an entire revolution. The destruction of District 12 and President Coin's offer force her to question her identity, her responsibilities, and the true cost of rebellion. What would you have done in Katniss' position? Accepted the role immediately or refused the pressure? Let us know in the comments below, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and join us next time on Boundless Books for the next chapter of Mockingjay. Welcome back to Boundless Books. Today, we're diving into Chapter 5 of Mockingjay, titled Underground. This chapter takes us deeper into the hidden world of District 13 as Katniss begins preparing for her role as the Mockingjay. We also see how propaganda, war strategy, and emotional manipulation become powerful weapons in the rebellion. Let's explore this intense and emotional chapter. After President Coin publicly announces Katniss as the Mockingjay, Katniss feels trapped once again. She realizes that even though she escaped the Hunger Games arena, she is still being used as a symbol in another political game. Coin's speech especially disturbs her because it sounds less like a partnership and more like a warning. Katniss understands that if she fails to obey District 13, the promises made to protect Peeta and the other victors could disappear instantly. The tension between Katniss and Gale continues as they discuss Coin's intentions. Gale believes Coin's harsh leadership is necessary during wartime, while Katniss feels uncomfortable being controlled again. Their disagreement highlights how war changes people differently. Gale has become more accepting of military discipline, while Katniss still values personal freedom above everything else. The next morning, Katniss is taken by her prep team, Venia, Flavius, and Octavia, who begin transforming her into the Mockingjay. Although they are happy to work again, Katniss notices how thin and weak they still look after being punished in District 13. This reminds her that even the rebels are capable of cruelty and strict control. Soon, Katniss and Gale are sent deep underground into District 13's Special Defense Section. The underground setting feels cold, mechanical, and heavily guarded. Security checks are everywhere, showing how seriously District 13 treats secrecy and control. Here they meet BT, the brilliant Victor from District 3, who is now designing advanced weapons for the rebellion. BT proudly presents Katniss with a brand new bow specially designed for her. The weapon is voice-activated and responds only to Katniss herself. He also gives her explosive arrows and incendiary arrows capable of causing massive destruction. Gale receives powerful military weapons as well. Katniss is amazed by the technology but also unsettled by how prepared District 13 is for war. During this underground visit, BT points out small hummingbirds flying in a hidden artificial meadow. Their delicate wings remind Katniss of freedom and nature, things mostly absent in the strict underground world of District 13. BT jokingly says he wishes he could design wings for Katniss herself, symbolizing her role as the Mockingjay. Katniss quietly realizes that becoming the Mockingjay is not something someone else can create for her. She must become that symbol on her own. Later, Katniss returns to film her very first propo, a propaganda video meant to inspire the districts. She is dressed in Cinna's Mockingjay outfit, with dramatic makeup and lighting surrounding her. However, everything feels fake. Fulvia Cardew feeds her scripted lines while camera crews try to capture the perfect image. Katniss struggles badly during filming. Her lines sound forced, and she feels uncomfortable pretending to be a heroic symbol. Despite multiple attempts, the propo lacks emotion and authenticity. The artificial smoke, dramatic poses, and rehearsed dialogue only make her feel more disconnected from herself. Finally, Haymitch watches the footage and bluntly criticizes it. He laughs and says Katniss will destroy the revolution if they continue making her act. Though harsh, Haymitch understands Katniss better than anyone. He realizes that her strength comes from genuine emotion, not scripted performances. The chapter ends with Katniss frustrated and emotionally exhausted. She begins to understand that being the Mockingjay will require more than costumes and speeches. People follow her because she is real, not because she plays a role. Key moments in the chapter include: Katniss feels manipulated again, she realizes Coin may be using her just like the Capitol once did. Tension between Katniss and Gale, their different views about leadership and war become clearer. Visit to District 13's underground defense section, readers see the advanced military preparations of the rebellion. BT creates Katniss's special bow, the voice-activated weapon symbolizes her unique identity. The hummingbird imagery, wings symbolize Katniss's gradual transformation into the Mockingjay. Katniss fails during her first propo shoot, her inability to fake emotions becomes obvious. Haymitch criticizes the propaganda video, he understands authenticity matters more than scripted heroism. Differences between the book and the movie: in the book, the underground defense area and BT's weapons are described in much greater detail than in the film adaptation. The novel spends more time exploring Katniss's discomfort with Coin's leadership and the similarities between District 13 and the Capitol. Katniss's failed propo shoot is more awkward and emotionally detailed in the book. The symbolism of wings and the Mockingjay identity receives stronger focus in the novel. Haymitch's criticism feels sharper and more impactful in the book version. Chapter 5, Underground, shows that the rebellion is far more complicated than Katniss imagined. While District 13 fights against the Capitol, it also controls people through fear, discipline, and propaganda. Katniss begins realizing that becoming the Mockingjay cannot simply be staged with costumes and speeches, it must come from genuine emotion and truth. This chapter sets up her journey toward becoming the true symbol of rebellion. What do you think? Was Haymitch right about Katniss's first propo failing because it felt fake? Let us know in the comments below, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and join us next time on Boundless Books for Chapter 6 of Mockingjay. Welcome back to Boundless Books. Today, we're diving into Chapter 6 of Mockingjay, titled The Prep Team. This chapter focuses on Katniss's struggle to become the symbol of the rebellion while showing how difficult it is for her to perform for the cameras. Haymitch steps in with a new strategy that changes everything, proving that Katniss is strongest when she is simply herself. Let's explore this powerful chapter filled with tension, strategy, and emotional growth. Katniss is in the middle of filming propaganda videos, known as Propo, for the rebellion in District 13. However, the filming is going terribly. She feels awkward, unnatural, and uncomfortable repeating scripted lines written for her. Every attempt sounds fake, and the rebel leaders become frustrated because the Mockingjay, the symbol meant to inspire Panem, is failing on camera. While Katniss struggles through another recording session, she suddenly hears a familiar voice criticizing her performance. It is Haymitch Abernathy. This is the first time Katniss has seen or heard him since the quarter quell ended. Hearing him immediately brings back memories of Peeta being left behind in the Capitol, something Katniss still blames Haymitch for. The next morning, Haymitch gathers everyone involved with the Propo, including Plutarch, Fulvia, Gale, and the prep team. He plays the failed footage of Katniss trying to read scripted lines. Everyone can clearly see how stiff and uncomfortable she looks. Haymitch explains that Katniss cannot inspire people by acting. She only becomes powerful when she reacts naturally to real situations. Haymitch reminds everyone of the moments that made Katniss famous throughout Panem. He mentions when she volunteered for Prim during the Hunger Games, when she honored Rue after her death, and when she protected Peeta. None of those moments were planned. Katniss inspired people because her emotions were genuine. Gale quickly understands Haymitch's point. Instead of forcing Katniss to perform in a studio, they should place her in real situations where her emotions can come naturally. Haymitch proposes taking Katniss into the districts where fighting is happening and filming her reactions there. Plutarch supports the idea immediately. He believes authentic moments will create far more powerful propaganda than scripted speeches. President Coin agrees, although she wants Katniss heavily guarded. Eventually, they decide to send Katniss to District 8, where the rebellion is active and hospitals are struggling to care for injured civilians. Katniss realizes that the rebels are once again using her as a symbol, just as the Capitol once used her during the Hunger Games. However, she also understands that this may truly help people fighting against Snow's rule. Before leaving, Katniss spends time with her prep team Octavia, Venia, and Flavius. The teen, once cheerful and obsessed with fashion in the Capitol, now appears weak and traumatized after being imprisoned in District 13 for stealing bread. Katniss feels sympathy for them despite their former Capitol lifestyle. Their condition reminds her that cruelty exists everywhere, even among the rebels. As preparations continue, Katniss slowly accepts her role as the Mockingjay. Though she still doubts herself, Haymitch's plan gives her hope that she can help the rebellion without pretending to be someone she is not. Key moments in the chapter include: Haymitch returns. Katniss hears Haymitch's voice for the first time since the Quarter Quell. The failed propo. Katniss struggles badly while trying to deliver scripted lines. Haymitch's realization. He explains that Katniss only inspires people naturally. The new strategy. The rebels decide to film Katniss in real battle situations instead of studios. Decision to visit District 8. Katniss prepares to witness the reality of war firsthand. The prep team's condition. Octavia, Venia, and Flavius appear emotionally broken after punishment in District 13. Differences between the book and the movie. The book gives much more detail about Haymitch analyzing why Katniss fails on camera. Katniss's thoughts about being used by both the Capitol and District 13 are explored more deeply in the novel. The prep team's suffering and imprisonment are described with greater emotional detail in the book. The movie shortens several conversations between Haymitch, Plutarch, and Coin regarding propaganda strategy. Katniss's internal conflict about becoming the Mockingjay feels much stronger in the novel version. Chapter 6, The Prep Team, is an important turning point in Mockingjay because it changes the rebellion's entire strategy. Haymitch realizes that Katniss's true strength is not acting or giving speeches, it is her honesty and compassion in real moments of danger. This chapter also reveals the emotional cost of war, showing that suffering exists on both sides of the conflict. As Katniss prepares to enter District 8, the rebellion is about to become far more real and dangerous. What do you think? Was Haymitch right about Katniss needing to be natural instead of scripted? Let us know in the comments below, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and join Boundless Books for Chapter 7 of Mockingjay. Welcome back to Boundless Books. Today, we're diving into Chapter 7 of Mockingjay, titled District 8. This chapter marks a major turning point in Katniss's journey as the Mockingjay. For the first time, she sees the true impact of the rebellion on ordinary citizens and discovers the power of her own voice. Katniss, Gale, and the Capitol provided film crew travel to District 8 as part of a propaganda effort. District 8 is known for producing textiles, and it has suffered greatly under Capitol control. Upon arriving, Katniss immediately notices the destruction caused by years of oppression and recent fighting. The group visits an underground hospital where hundreds of injured civilians are being treated. Many of the patients are workers who have participated in the rebellion. Despite their injuries and hardships, the people are excited to see Katniss. To them, she is more than a Hunger Games victor, she is a symbol of hope. As Katniss walks through the hospital, she meets wounded men, women, and children. Their stories remind her of the suffering endured throughout Panem. She realizes that the rebellion is not just about politics, it is about real people struggling to survive. While filming continues, Katniss feels uncomfortable acting for the cameras. The scripted propaganda messages created by District 13 seem artificial and ineffective. She finds it difficult to deliver lines that do not reflect her genuine feelings. Suddenly, alarms begin to sound throughout the hospital. Capitol hovercrafts have been spotted approaching the district. Doctors and nurses rush to protect their patients while everyone prepares for the worst. The hovercrafts launch a devastating attack. Explosions tear through the area, destroying parts of the hospital and killing many innocent people. Katniss witnesses the chaos and bravery of the medical staff, who continue helping patients even as danger surrounds them. The attack enrages Katniss. She sees firsthand that the Capitol is willing to target helpless civilians and wounded patients. Any remaining doubts she had about the rebellion begin to disappear. After the attack ends, the film crew captures Katniss's reaction. This time, she does not need a script. Speaking from the heart, she condemns President Snow and the Capitol's cruelty. Her words are emotional, authentic, and powerful. Katniss declares that the rebels will continue fighting and that the Capitol cannot extinguish their hope. Her speech includes the memorable statement that fire is catching, symbolizing the growing rebellion spreading across Panem. The resulting footage becomes one of the most effective propaganda pieces created by District 13. For the first time, Katniss truly embodies the role of the Mockingjay. Her message resonates because it comes from genuine anger, grief, and determination rather than rehearsed lines. By the end of the chapter, Katniss begins to understand that her greatest strength is not acting but telling the truth. Her authentic emotions inspire others far more effectively than any carefully written script ever could. Key moments in the chapter include: Katniss visits District 8 with the film crew. She tours an underground hospital filled with wounded citizens. The people of District 8 view her as a symbol of hope. Capitol hovercrafts launch a brutal attack. Doctors and nurses risk their lives to save patients. Katniss witnesses the Capitol's cruelty firsthand. She delivers a powerful unscripted speech. The fire is catching message becomes a major propaganda success. Differences between the book and the movie: the book provides more detail about Katniss's thoughts during the hospital visit. The movie expands the visual scale of the Capitol air raid. Katniss's emotional reaction is explored more deeply in the novel. The film places greater emphasis on the propaganda footage and its impact. Chapter 7, District 8, is one of the most important chapters in Mockingjay. The Capitol's attack on innocent civilians transforms Katniss from a reluctant symbol into a genuine leader of the rebellion. Her heartfelt speech proves that authenticity is more powerful than scripted propaganda and inspires hope throughout Panem. That wraps up Chapter 7, District 8. Do you think Katniss's speech was the moment she truly became the Mockingjay? Let us know in the comments below, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. Join us next time for Chapter 8. Welcome back to Boundless Books. Welcome back to Boundless Books. Today, we're diving into Chapter 8 of Mockingjay, titled Flames of Rebellion. This chapter takes us deeper into the growing rebellion against the Capitol as Katniss becomes the symbolic face of hope for the districts. The emotional and political tensions continue to rise while the rebels prepare to inspire the nation through powerful propaganda videos. Let's explore the fear, courage, and determination that shaped this important chapter. The chapter begins with Katniss recovering emotionally after witnessing the destruction and suffering in District 8. Although she agreed to become the Mockingjay, she still struggles with the pressure of representing an entire revolution. President Coin and Plutarch Heavensby understand that simply dressing Katniss in symbolic outfits will not inspire people. They need something real, something emotional and authentic. The rebel team decides to create short propaganda videos designed to encourage rebellion across Panem. However, the first attempts fail badly. Katniss looks stiff, uncomfortable, and unnatural while reading scripted lines prepared by the rebel leaders. Every sentence sounds forced, and the emotion they hope to create is missing entirely. Haymitch observes the situation carefully and realizes the problem immediately. Katniss cannot pretend to care, she has to genuinely feel the emotions she expresses. He explains that the Capitol fears Katniss because she represents authentic defiance, not polished speeches. Instead of filming in a studio, Haymitch suggests taking Katniss into real districts where rebellion and suffering are visible. The team agrees, and they travel to the hospital in District 8 once again. There, Katniss sees injured civilians, exhausted nurses, and frightened families trying to survive. Despite their terrible conditions, many people are inspired simply by seeing her. They view her as proof that the Capitol can be challenged. As Katniss speaks with the wounded survivors, her anger toward the Capitol grows stronger. She realizes how deeply ordinary citizens suffer because of Snow's cruelty. The cameras quietly capture these unscripted moments. Unlike the earlier staged recordings, Katniss now speaks naturally and emotionally. Suddenly, the piece is shattered when Capitol aircraft appear overhead. The hospital is attacked without warning. Explosions tear through the building, causing chaos and destruction. Katniss and Gale rush to help survivors escape while smoke and fire spread everywhere. Katniss witnesses innocent people being killed, including wounded patients who were unable to flee. The horror enrages her completely. Standing amidst the burning ruins, she gives an emotional speech directly to the cameras. She condemns President Snow for targeting helpless civilians and declares that the rebellion will continue no matter how much destruction the Capitol causes. Her speech is powerful because it comes from genuine pain and fury. There is no acting involved. For the first time, the Propo team captures the true Mockingjay, the symbol of resistance that Panem desperately needs. The rebels later broadcast the footage across the districts. Citizens everywhere begin responding to Katniss's message. Her anger, grief, and determination inspire hope in people who had nearly given up. The rebellion is no longer just a secret uprising. It is becoming a united movement fueled by shared suffering and courage. Meanwhile, Katniss continues worrying about Peeta. The Capitol broadcasts featuring him still haunt her emotionally. She cannot understand why he appears calm while speaking against the rebellion. Deep down, she fears he is being manipulated or tortured by the Capitol. The chapter ends with the realization that Katniss's strength comes not from pretending to be a hero, but from expressing real emotions. Her honesty transforms her into the symbol the rebellion needs, and the flames of rebellion begin spreading across Panem. Key moments in the chapter include failure of the scripted Propo. Katniss struggles to deliver artificial speeches convincingly. Haymitch's important realization: he understands Katniss only inspires people when she is genuine. Return to District 8. Katniss witnesses the suffering of injured civilians and hospital workers. Capitol bombing attack. The hospital is destroyed in a brutal airstrike. Katniss's emotional speech, her furious response becomes one of the rebellion's most powerful propaganda moments. Rise of rebellion across Panem. The broadcast inspires citizens in multiple districts to resist the Capitol. Katniss's concern for Peeta. She continues worrying about his safety and emotional condition. Differences between the book and the movie. In the book, Katniss's thoughts and emotional reactions during the hospital bombing are described in much greater detail. The movie intensifies the visual destruction of District 8 with larger action sequences and dramatic explosions. Haymitch's role in understanding Katniss's authentic personality is explored more deeply in the novel. The book focuses more on the emotional impact of the bombing on civilians rather than only the action itself. Katniss's internal struggle about becoming the Mockingjay is more detailed in the novel. Chapter 8, Flames of Rebellion, marks a major turning point in Mockingjay. Katniss finally becomes the true voice of the rebellion, not because of scripted speeches, but because of her raw honesty and emotional courage. The Capitol's cruelty only strengthens the determination of the districts, and the rebellion begins spreading like fire throughout Panem. That wraps up Chapter 8 of Mockingjay. What did you think about Katniss's powerful speech after the bombing of District 8? Let us know in the comments below, and don't forget to like, subscribe. Welcome back to Boundless Books. Today, we're diving into Chapter 9 of Mockingjay, titled The Hospital Bombing. This chapter becomes one of the most shocking and emotional moments in the novel as Katniss witnesses firsthand the brutality of the Capitol. What begins as a visit to wounded civilians quickly turns into a devastating tragedy that strengthens the rebellion and transforms Katniss into the symbol the districts desperately need. Katniss and the film crew arrive at the hospital in District 8. The facility is overcrowded with injured civilians, rebels, and workers who have suffered from the ongoing conflict. Everywhere she looks, Katniss sees evidence of the Capitol's cruelty. Patients are packed into rooms, supplies are limited, and medical staff work tirelessly despite impossible conditions. As she walks through the hospital, Katniss speaks with the wounded and learns more about the suffering occurring throughout the districts. Many people express admiration for her and gratitude that someone is finally standing up to the Capitol. However, Katniss feels uncomfortable with the attention because she sees herself as an ordinary person rather than a hero. The hospital staff proudly show Katniss how they continue treating patients despite severe shortages. Their determination impresses her. These doctors, nurses, and volunteers risk their lives every day to save others. Even though they know they could become targets at any moment, while filming propaganda material, Katniss notices Capitol hovercraft approaching in the distance. At first, there is confusion because the hospital is clearly marked and protected under the rules of war. Medical facilities are supposed to be off-limits. The hospital workers assume the aircraft are merely passing by. Suddenly, the hovercraft launch a devastating attack. Bombs rain down on the hospital, causing massive explosions. Buildings collapse almost instantly. Patients who cannot move are trapped inside. Medical staff desperately attempt to evacuate survivors while chaos erupts everywhere. Katniss and Gale are forced to take cover as debris flies through the air. They watch helplessly as the hospital is consumed by fire and destruction. The attack is horrifying because most of the victims are wounded civilians who have no ability to defend themselves. The bombing reveals the Capitol's willingness to ignore every moral boundary in order to maintain power. Katniss realizes that President Snow wants to spread fear throughout the districts and demonstrate that nowhere is safe. As the destruction continues, Katniss witnesses extraordinary courage. Doctors remain behind to help patients escape. Nurses refuse to abandon the injured. Ordinary citizens risk their lives to save complete strangers. Their bravery deeply affects her. After the attack, the film crew captures the aftermath. Smoke rises from the ruins while survivors search desperately for loved ones. The emotional devastation is overwhelming. Katniss is furious, heartbroken, and unable to hide her anger. At that moment, she delivers one of her most powerful speeches. Speaking directly to the camera, she condemns the Capitol's actions and challenges President Snow. Rather than reading a scripted message, she speaks from genuine emotion. Her words carry a level of authenticity that no propaganda writer could ever create. Katniss points out that the Capitol deliberately targeted helpless people who posed no threat. She declares that the districts will continue fighting despite the violence. Her passionate response becomes exactly the kind of message the rebellion needs. The crew immediately realizes they have captured something special. Katniss's anger, grief, and determination feel completely real. The resulting propos becomes far more effective than anything Plutarch and Coin had planned. By the end of the chapter, Katniss understands that being the Mockingjay is not about acting in front of cameras. It is about representing the suffering, resilience, and hope of the people. The hospital bombing becomes a turning point, both for the rebellion and for Katniss's acceptance of her role as its symbol. Key moments in the chapter include: Katniss visits the overcrowded hospital in District 8. She witnesses the severe impact of the war on civilians. Medical staff continue working despite dangerous conditions. Capitol hovercraft unexpectedly approach the hospital. The hospital is deliberately bombed by the Capitol. Doctors and nurses display incredible bravery during the attack. Katniss witnesses the tragic aftermath of the bombing. She delivers a powerful unscripted speech against President Snow. The footage becomes one of the rebellion's most effective propos. Differences between the book and the movie: the movie visually emphasizes the destruction and chaos of the bombing, making the attack more immediate and dramatic. The book provides deeper insight into Katniss's emotional reactions and thoughts during the event. Several conversations with hospital workers are shortened in the film adaptation. The novel spends more time highlighting the courage and sacrifices of the medical staff. Katniss's internal realization about becoming the Mockingjay receives greater attention in the book. That wraps up Chapter 9, The Hospital Bombing, from Mockingjay. This chapter showcases the devastating cost of war while highlighting the courage of ordinary people who refuse to surrender. The Capitol's attack on the hospital exposes its cruelty, while Katniss's passionate response proves why she is becoming the face of the rebellion. Her words inspire hope at a time when the districts need it most. What did you think of Katniss's speech after the bombing? Was this the moment she truly became the Mockingjay? Let us know in the comments below, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. Join us next time as we continue our journey through Mockingjay on Boundless Books. Welcome back to Boundless Books. Today, we're diving into Chapter 10 of Mockingjay, titled The Star Squad. This chapter marks a major turning point in the rebellion as Katniss becomes part of a special unit that will travel toward the Capitol. While the mission appears military in nature, Katniss quickly discovers that appearances can be deceiving. Following the success of recent propaganda broadcasts, District 13's leaders decide that Katniss's symbolic value remains too important to ignore. The rebels recognize that her presence inspires hope throughout Panem, making her one of their most powerful weapons. Katniss learns that she will be assigned to a unit known as the Star Squad. Officially, the squad is intended to accompany rebel forces advancing toward the Capitol. However, she soon realizes that the unit's true purpose is not frontline combat. Instead, It has been carefully assembled to produce inspiring footage that can be broadcast across the districts. The squad includes both experienced soldiers and members of the film crew that have worked with Katniss before. Familiar faces such as Cressida, Messala, Pollux, and Castor are present. Their cameras and recording equipment reveal how important media remains to the rebellion's strategy. Katniss experiences mixed emotions about the assignment. On one hand, she wants to contribute to the war effort and help bring down President Snow. On the other hand, she dislikes feeling like a tool used by others for political purposes. Throughout her journey, she has repeatedly found herself manipulated by powerful leaders, and this mission seems to continue that pattern. As preparations continue, Katniss spends time with her fellow squad members. She notices the professionalism of the soldiers and the dedication of the film crew. Although everyone understands the risks involved, there is also a sense of determination among them. They know the Capitol campaign may determine the outcome of the entire war. The chapter also highlights the growing relationship between Katniss and her companions. Finnick remains one of her closest allies, providing support and understanding during difficult moments. Gale continues to focus on military objectives, reflecting his increasing commitment to the rebellion's cause. Military planners brief the squad about the upcoming campaign. The capital remains heavily defended, and nobody expects an easy victory. Katniss understands that even if Star Squad is intended primarily for propaganda, danger will still be unavoidable. War rarely follows carefully prepared plans. One of the most important themes in this chapter is the relationship between truth and propaganda. District 13 criticizes the Capitol for manipulating information, yet it also uses carefully crafted media messages to influence public opinion. Katniss increasingly notices these similarities, causing her to question how much control she truly has over her own image. As deployment approaches, tension rises throughout the squad. Everyone prepares equipment, reviews plans, and mentally braces for the challenges ahead. The Capitol represents both the source of oppression and the final obstacle standing between the rebels and victory. By the end of the chapter, Star Squad is ready to move forward. Katniss understands that she has entered a new phase of the rebellion. Whether she likes it or not, she remains the face of the revolution, and her role in the coming conflict will be more important than ever. Key moments in the chapter include: Katniss is assigned to the Star Squad. The squad's propaganda purpose becomes clear. Katniss reunites with familiar allies. Preparations begin for the Capitol campaign. Themes of media influence and manipulation are explored. The squad gets ready for deployment. Differences between the book and the movie: the novel spends more time exploring Katniss's internal thoughts about propaganda. The squad's formation and objectives receive more detailed explanation. Character interactions within the team are expanded in the book. Katniss's concerns about being manipulated are more prominent in the novel. Chapter 10, The Star Squad, sets the stage for the rebellion's most dangerous mission. As Katniss joins a unit designed to inspire Panem while advancing toward the capital, she must balance her role as both soldier and symbol. The chapter explores powerful themes of propaganda, truth, and leadership while preparing readers for the intense events ahead. That wraps up Chapter 10, The Star Squad. Do you think Katniss was right to question the rebels' use of propaganda? Let us know in the comments below, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. Join us next time on Boundless Books for Chapter 11 of Mockingjay. Welcome back to Boundless Books. Today, we're diving into Chapter 11 of Mockingjay, titled Peeta's Warning. This chapter delivers one of the most suspenseful moments in the novel as Peeta risks his own safety to send a critical message to District 13. His actions reveal that despite everything the Capitol has done to him, his loyalty and courage remain intact. The chapter begins with District 13 monitoring another Capitol broadcast. As usual, Katniss finds it painful to watch Peeta appear on television. Since his capture during the Quarter Quell, every appearance reminds her of the suffering he has endured at the hands of President Snow and the Capitol. During the broadcast, Peeta appears physically exhausted and emotionally strained. His words seem carefully controlled, and it is obvious that Capitol officials are closely monitoring everything he says. Nevertheless, Katniss notices signs that he is trying to communicate something important. As the interview continues, Peeta suddenly issues an unexpected warning. Beneath the surface of his official statements, he reveals that District 13 is in immediate danger. His message is subtle but clear enough for the rebels to understand. The realization spreads rapidly through the command center. For a brief moment, everyone is stunned. Then the seriousness of the situation becomes clear. Rebel leaders quickly determine that Peeta's warning is genuine. If the capital knows the location of District 13 and is preparing an attack, immediate action is necessary. Alarms begin sounding throughout the underground district. Residents are ordered to evacuate vulnerable areas and move toward secure shelters. The carefully organized emergency system demonstrates the level of preparation District 13 has maintained for exactly this type of crisis. Katniss is overwhelmed by conflicting emotions. She is terrified by the possibility of an attack, but she is also deeply moved by Peeta's courage. He knowingly endangered himself by providing information that could help the rebellion. Given the capital's methods, Katniss understands that punishment will likely follow. As people rush through the corridors, District 13 transforms into a scene of controlled chaos. Soldiers direct civilians toward safety while leaders coordinate defensive measures. Despite the fear, the district's strict discipline allows the evacuation to proceed efficiently. The chapter highlights one of Peeta's greatest strengths, his willingness to sacrifice for others. Even while imprisoned and subjected to constant pressure, he remains focused on protecting innocent people. His actions stand in contrast to many leaders throughout the story who often place political goals above individual lives. Katniss cannot stop thinking about what Peeta must be experiencing. She knows he is isolated, frightened, and constantly manipulated by the capital. Yet he still found a way to help. This realization strengthens her determination to survive and continue fighting. As preparations continue, the people of District 13 settle into secure underground shelters. The atmosphere is tense, with everyone waiting to see whether the warning will prove accurate. The uncertainty creates a powerful sense of suspense throughout the chapter. Soon afterward, the capital attack begins. Because of Peeta's message, however, the district is prepared. Lives that might have been lost are protected by the early warning. The rebels now fully understand the enormous risk Peeta took to save them. The chapter also reinforces one of Mockingjay's central themes: information can be as powerful as weapons. A single warning delivered at the right moment can change the course of events. Peeta's bravery demonstrates that resistance takes many forms, not all of them involving direct combat. By the end of the chapter, District 13 has survived the initial threat thanks largely to Peeta's intervention. While the danger is far from over, the rebels have been given a crucial opportunity to endure and continue their fight against the capital. Key moments in the chapter include: Peeta appears in another capital broadcast. A hidden warning is delivered to District 13. Rebel leaders recognize the danger. Emergency alarms activate throughout the district. Civilians evacuate to secure shelters. The capital attack begins. Peeta's courage saves countless lives. Differences between the book and the movie: the novel spends more time exploring Katniss's emotional reaction to Peeta's warning. District 13's evacuation procedures are described in greater detail. Readers receive deeper insight into Peeta's bravery and sacrifice. The tension leading up to the attack is more extensively developed in the book. Chapter 11, Peeta's Warning, showcases one of Peeta Mellark's most heroic moments. Despite being imprisoned by the capital, he finds a way to warn District 13 of impending danger. His actions save lives and demonstrate that courage is not measured by physical strength alone. The chapter increases the tension of the story while reminding readers why Peeta remains such an important figure in the rebellion. That wraps up Chapter 11, Peeta's Warning. Peeta risked severe punishment to protect thousands of people. Would you have been brave enough to do the same under capital control? Let us know in the comments below. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. Join us next time for Chapter 12 of Mockingjay on Boundless Books. Welcome back to Boundless Books. Today, we're diving into Chapter 12 of Mockingjay, titled The Nut. This chapter takes us to District 2, home to one of the capital's most heavily defended military installations. As the rebellion advances, Katniss witnesses a major strategic decision that could determine the future of the war. After the successes of recent rebel campaigns, attention turns toward District 2. Unlike many other districts, District 2 has historically maintained close ties with the capital. It serves as a center for military training and defense, making it one of the rebellion's toughest targets. At the heart of District 2 lies a massive underground fortress known as the Nut. Built deep inside a mountain, the structure stores weapons, supplies, and personnel essential to the capital's war effort. The fortress is designed to withstand attacks and is considered nearly impossible to capture through conventional means. When Katniss arrives, she quickly realizes the challenge facing the rebels. A direct assault would likely result in enormous casualties on both sides. The mountain's defenses provide strong protection, and capital forces inside are prepared for a prolonged fight. Military commanders debate their options. Some argue that a full-scale attack is necessary despite the risks. Others seek alternatives that might reduce losses while still neutralizing the threat. The discussions reveal the harsh realities of war, where every decision carries serious consequences. Eventually, a bold strategy emerges. Rather than attacking the Nut directly, the rebels decide to target the mountain's entrances. By triggering massive rock slides and avalanches, they hope to seal the bunker and trap the defenders inside. This would prevent supplies and personnel from moving in or out, effectively rendering the fortress useless. The plan raises moral questions. Katniss struggles with the idea of trapping thousands of people underground. Although many inside support the capital, she knows that not all of them are evil. Some may simply be following orders or trying to survive. Despite her concerns, Katniss also understands the alternative. A direct assault could lead to even greater bloodshed, costing countless lives among both the rebels and the defenders. The decision reflects one of the central themes of Mockingjay: the difficult choices forced upon people during war. The operation begins. Explosives are carefully placed around the mountain. When detonated, they trigger enormous collapses that block the main entrances to the Nut. Massive clouds of dust and debris fill the air as sections of the mountainside crash down. The rebels watch as the fortress becomes isolated from the outside world. The attack is effective, but it leaves many wondering about the fate of those trapped inside. The success of the mission comes with emotional and ethical consequences. After the entrances are sealed, Katniss participates in another propaganda broadcast. Speaking directly to those trapped within the Nut, she delivers a message encouraging surrender. Rather than demanding destruction, she offers them a chance to choose a different path. Her speech emphasizes that the rebellion is fighting against oppression rather than seeking revenge. Katniss hopes to persuade soldiers and civilians alike that continuing to support the capital will only prolong suffering. The broadcast demonstrates Katniss's growing importance as the Mockingjay. While military victories are important, the battle for hearts and minds remains equally critical. Her ability to connect emotionally with people makes her one of the rebellion's most powerful assets. By the chapter's end, the fate of the Nut remains uncertain. However, the fortress has been effectively neutralized, and the rebellion gains another significant advantage. At the same time, Katniss is left reflecting on the difficult balance between military necessity and human compassion. Key moments in the chapter include: Katniss arrives in District 2. The military importance of the Nut is explained. Rebel leaders debate possible attack strategies. A plan is created to seal the mountain entrances. Massive explosions trigger rock slides and avalanches. The Nut becomes isolated from outside support. Katniss records a surrender message for those trapped inside. The rebellion gains a major strategic victory. Differences between the book and the movie: the book provides more detailed explanations of the Nut's military significance. Katniss's internal conflict about the strategy receives greater attention in the novel. Strategic discussions among rebel leaders are expanded in the book. The ethical implications of trapping the defenders are explored more deeply in the novel. Chapter 12, The Nut, highlights one of the rebellion's most important victories while exploring the difficult moral decisions that accompany war. Katniss continues to grow into her role as the Mockingjay, balancing compassion with the harsh realities of conflict. The successful neutralization of the Nut weakens the capital significantly, but it also reminds readers that even necessary victories often come at a moral cost. That wraps up Chapter 12, The Nut. Do you think sealing the mountain was a better choice than launching a direct assault? Let us know in the comments below. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. Join us next time for Chapter 13 of Mockingjay. Welcome back to Boundless Books. Today, we're diving into Chapter 13 of Mockingjay, titled The Rescue Mission. This chapter focuses on one of the rebellion's most daring operations as District 13 attempts to rescue prisoners held by the Capitol. Filled with suspense, hope, and emotional anticipation, the chapter demonstrates the lengths to which the rebels are willing to go to protect their own. As the chapter begins, Katniss continues to struggle with the emotional burden of Peeta's captivity. His televised appearances have become increasingly disturbing, and she fears for his safety every day. Despite her efforts to focus on the rebellion's objectives, her thoughts constantly return to the possibility that Peeta may never come home. Meanwhile, District 13's leadership receives valuable intelligence regarding the location of several important prisoners being held by the Capitol. Among them are Peeta, Johanna Mason, and other captured victors and rebels. The information presents a rare opportunity, but also a significant challenge. Any rescue attempt would require entering Capitol territory and facing overwhelming security measures. A specialized team is assembled to carry out the mission. The operation is kept highly secret, and only a handful of individuals know the details. Katniss is informed that preparations are underway, but she is not permitted to participate. This restriction frustrates her greatly. She feels powerless, forced to wait while others determine the fate of people she deeply cares about. As plans move forward, tension spreads throughout District 13. Everyone understands that failure could have devastating consequences. The Capitol's defenses are formidable, and the possibility of casualties is high. Nevertheless, the mission proceeds because the potential rewards outweigh the risks. While the rescue team departs, Katniss experiences an agonizing period of uncertainty. Every hour feels endless as she waits for updates. She imagines countless possible outcomes, ranging from triumphant success to complete disaster. Her inability to influence events makes the waiting even more painful. The chapter effectively captures the emotional strain of anticipation. Rather than focusing entirely on action, it emphasizes the psychological toll experienced by those left behind. Katniss realizes that warfare is not only fought on battlefields, it is also fought within the hearts and minds of those who care about the people at risk. Eventually, word arrives that the operation has succeeded. The rescue team has managed to infiltrate the Capitol and extract the prisoners. The announcement spreads rapidly through District 13, generating relief and excitement among residents who had been anxiously awaiting news. However, the emotional impact of the rescue extends beyond simple celebration. Many of the rescued prisoners have endured severe physical and psychological hardships. Their experiences in captivity have left visible scars. The reunion is therefore bittersweet. Combining joy with the recognition of the suffering they have endured, Katniss eagerly anticipates seeing Peeta again. For months, she has relied on memories and brief televised appearances to maintain hope. Now, the possibility of finally reuniting with him feels almost unreal. Her emotions fluctuate between excitement, anxiety, and fear about what captivity may have done to him. The chapter concludes with the rescued prisoners safely returned to District 13. While the operation represents a major victory for the rebellion, it also foreshadows new challenges ahead. Rescue is only the first step. Recovery and healing will require time, patience, and support. The success of the mission boosts morale throughout the rebellion. It demonstrates that the Capitol is vulnerable and that coordinated action can achieve remarkable results. For many rebels, the rescue becomes a symbol of hope during an increasingly difficult war. Key moments in the chapter include: District 13 receives intelligence about imprisoned captives. Leaders approve a dangerous rescue operation. A specialized team infiltrates Capitol territory. Katniss anxiously waits for news of the mission. The rescue operation succeeds. Captured prisoners are returned safely. Hope spreads throughout District 13. Differences between the book and the movie: the book provides more detail about Katniss's emotional state while waiting for updates. Internal thoughts and fears are explored more extensively in the novel. The movie places greater emphasis on the visual action of the rescue mission. Several strategic details are explained more thoroughly in the book. Chapter 13, The Rescue Mission, is a powerful turning point in Mockingjay. It highlights the courage of the rebels, the importance of loyalty, and the emotional cost of war. The successful rescue provides a much-needed victory for District 13 while setting the stage for major developments ahead. Most importantly, it reminds readers that hope can survive even in the darkest moments of conflict. Welcome back to Boundless Books. Today, we're diving into Chapter 14 of Mockingjay, titled Hijacked. This chapter delivers one of the most heartbreaking moments in the entire series. After weeks of worrying about Peeta's fate in the capital, Katniss finally sees him again. However, the reunion she has dreamed about turns into a devastating nightmare as the capital's cruelty reveals itself in a shocking new form. The chapter begins with news that the rescue mission has succeeded. The team sent to the capital has returned with several important prisoners, including Peeta, Johanna Mason, and Annie Cresta. District 13 erupts with excitement and relief. For Katniss, the news feels almost unbelievable. After months of uncertainty, Peeta is finally coming home. Katniss rushes to greet him. She imagines that despite everything he has endured, they will finally be reunited. Her emotions are overwhelming as she waits to see him. When Peeta arrives, however, something immediately feels wrong. Instead of showing relief or happiness, Peeta stares at Katniss with confusion and fear. Before anyone can react, he suddenly attacks her. The assault is swift and unexpected. Peeta, whose strength has always been remarkable, nearly kills Katniss before guards manage to pull him away. The entire room is left in shock. Katniss is seriously injured and must receive medical treatment. More painful than her physical injuries, however, is the emotional devastation. The person she risked everything to save has returned, seeing her not as a friend or loved one, but as an enemy. As doctors and military leaders investigate what happened, they uncover the horrifying truth. The capital subjected Peeta to a process called hijacking. Using tracker jacker venom combined with psychological conditioning, they altered his memories and emotions. Tracker jacker venom is known for causing fear, hallucinations, and distorted perceptions. Capital scientists used this venom repeatedly while manipulating Peeta's memories of Katniss. Instead of remembering her as someone he loves, he now associates her with terror, danger, and pain. The realization horrifies everyone. President Snow has effectively turned one of Katniss's greatest allies into a weapon against her. The capital could not break Katniss through physical force alone, so they targeted her emotionally by corrupting the person she cares about most. Katniss struggles to accept this reality. Throughout the war, thoughts of Peeta helped motivate her. She believed that rescuing him would bring hope and comfort. Now that hope seems shattered, the chapter also highlights the rebellion's growing understanding of capital tactics. Physical violence is only one of Snow's weapons. Psychological warfare can be just as destructive, if not more so. By altering Peeta's mind, the capital demonstrates how far it is willing to go to maintain control. Meanwhile, doctors begin evaluating whether Peeta can recover. Although the damage appears severe, they refuse to completely abandon hope. His true memories still exist somewhere beneath the conditioning. The challenge will be finding a way to separate reality from the false memories implanted by the capital. Katniss remains emotionally devastated. She realizes that the boy who once protected her in the arena, comforted her during difficult moments, and gave her hope may never fully return. The uncertainty is almost unbearable. By the end of the chapter, the successful rescue mission no longer feels like a victory. Instead, it exposes a new and terrifying battlefield, the human mind itself. Key moments in the chapter include Peeta, Johanna, and Annie are rescued from the capital. Katniss eagerly awaits Peeta's return. Peeta unexpectedly attacks Katniss. Medical teams discover Peeta has been hijacked. Tracker jacker venom was used to alter his memories. The capital turns Peeta into a psychological weapon. Katniss struggles to cope with the devastating truth. Doctors begin searching for a possible treatment. Differences between the book and the movie: the book provides more detailed explanations of the hijacking process. Katniss's emotional response is explored more deeply in the novel. Medical discussions regarding tracker jacker venom receive greater attention in the book. The novel spends more time examining the psychological impact on both Katniss and District 13. Chapter 14, Hijacked, is one of the most tragic chapters in Mockingjay. The long-awaited rescue of Peeta should have been a moment of triumph, but instead it becomes a devastating reminder of the capital's cruelty. By manipulating Peeta's memories, President Snow proves that psychological warfare can be even more damaging than physical violence. The chapter leaves readers wondering whether Peeta can ever recover and whether Katniss can endure yet another heartbreaking loss. Welcome back to Boundless Books. Today, we're diving into Chapter 15 of Mockingjay, titled Recovery and Doubt. After the devastating revelation that Peeta has been hijacked by the Capitol, both Katniss and District 13 are forced to confront the consequences. This chapter focuses on healing, uncertainty, and the emotional toll of psychological warfare. The chapter begins with Katniss recovering from the injuries she suffered during Peeta's attack. Although her physical wounds are healing, the emotional damage is far more difficult to overcome. She struggles to process the reality that Peeta, the boy who repeatedly risked his life for her, now sees her as a threat, confined to medical care. Katniss spends much of her time reflecting on everything that has happened since the beginning of the rebellion. The rescue mission succeeded in bringing Peeta home, but the Capitol ensured that the victory came at a terrible cost. Meanwhile, Peeta remains under strict observation. District 13 officials consider him dangerous, and few people are willing to trust him after the attack. He is kept isolated while doctors attempt to understand the full extent of the hijacking. Medical experts explain that the Capitol used tracker jacker venom to distort Peeta's memories. Instead of erasing his past, they altered how he interprets it. His genuine experiences remain buried beneath layers of fear and false associations. For Katniss, this explanation provides little comfort. She remembers the Peeta who stood beside her during the Hunger Games, protected her during dangerous situations, and offered kindness when few others did. Knowing that those memories still exist somewhere inside him makes the situation even more heartbreaking. The chapter spends considerable time exploring Katniss's internal conflict. She wants to believe that Peeta can recover, yet she cannot ignore the reality of what happened. Every memory she has of him now feels overshadowed by uncertainty. At the same time, District 13 continues preparing for war. Military leaders understand that the Capitol's actions reveal a dangerous new strategy. If memories and emotions can be manipulated, then anyone could potentially become a weapon. This realization increases concerns throughout the rebellion. The war is no longer being fought solely with weapons and armies. It is also a battle for truth, identity, and trust. Katniss receives updates about Peeta's treatment. Doctors begin testing methods designed to help him distinguish between real memories and altered ones. Progress is slow, and there are no guarantees of success. Some of the medical staff remain hopeful. They believe that because the hijacking altered existing memories rather than creating entirely new ones, recovery may still be possible. Others worry that the damage could be permanent. These conflicting opinions mirror Katniss's own feelings. She desperately wants the old Peeta back, yet she fears setting herself up for disappointment. The uncertainty leaves her emotionally exhausted. As the chapter progresses, Katniss also reflects on her role as the Mockingjay. While she struggles with personal grief, the rebellion still depends on her as a symbol of hope. Balancing these responsibilities becomes increasingly difficult. By the end of the chapter, no easy answers have emerged. Peeta remains trapped between reality and manipulation, while Katniss remains trapped between hope and doubt. The chapter emphasizes that recovery is rarely simple. Healing from physical wounds may take days or weeks, but repairing emotional and psychological damage can require far longer. Key moments in the chapter include: Katniss begins recovering from her injuries. Peeta remains isolated under close supervision. Doctors explain the science behind hijacking. District 13 evaluates the dangers of psychological warfare. Katniss struggles with conflicting emotions about Peeta. Medical teams begin searching for treatments. The rebellion prepares for future challenges. Hope and doubt coexist as recovery begins. Differences between the book and the movie: the novel provides more detailed explanations of Peeta's treatment. Katniss's emotional reflections are explored more extensively in the book. District 13's concerns regarding hijacking receive greater attention in the novel. The book spends more time examining the psychological effects of Capitol manipulation. Chapter 15, Recovery and Doubt, highlights the emotional aftermath of Peeta's hijacking. While Katniss heals physically, she struggles with uncertainty about whether the Peeta she once knew can ever return. The chapter reinforces one of Mockingjay's central themes: the Capitol's most dangerous weapon is not physical force but the ability to manipulate minds and emotions. As recovery begins, hope remains alive, but so does doubt. Welcome back to Boundless Books. Today, we're diving into Chapter 16 of Mockingjay, titled Finnick's Secrets. This chapter marks a major turning point in the war for Panem. While battles are often fought with weapons, this chapter demonstrates how information can be just as powerful. Finnick Odair steps into the spotlight and reveals shocking truths that threaten the very foundation of President Snow's power. Following the emotional turmoil surrounding Peeta's captivity and the ongoing rebel campaign, District 13 continues searching for ways to weaken the capital. BT, the brilliant strategist and electronics expert, proposes a new propaganda initiative. Instead of simply showcasing rebel victories, they will attack Snow's credibility by exposing secrets he has spent years hiding. The plan centers around Finnick Odair. Throughout his years as a victor, Finnick was admired across Panem for his charm, beauty, and popularity. However, behind that glamorous image lies a darker story. The capital used him as a political tool, forcing him into situations where he gained access to valuable information about influential capital citizens. Initially, Finnick is hesitant. Speaking publicly about these experiences means revisiting painful memories and exposing deeply personal wounds. Yet he understands that the rebellion needs every possible advantage. With Annie still in danger and Panem suffering under Snow's rule, Finnick decides to help. The rebels organize a carefully planned broadcast. Cameras begin recording as Finnick sits before the nation and starts revealing secrets. His calm and charismatic manner immediately captures attention. Viewers across Panem recognize him instantly, making him the perfect messenger. As the broadcast continues, Finnick describes how powerful capital officials traded confidential information in exchange for favors. He reveals stories of corruption, greed, betrayal, and manipulation among Panem's elite. More importantly, he explains how President Snow collected these secrets and used them to maintain control over influential people. The revelations paint a disturbing picture. Snow's power is not based solely on fear or military strength. It also depends on blackmail. By knowing everyone's secrets, he ensures loyalty from those around him. Anyone who threatens him risks having their private scandals exposed. The broadcast shocks viewers throughout Panem. Citizens who once viewed capital leaders as untouchable begin questioning everything they believed. The image of a stable and righteous government starts to crumble under the weight of Finnick's testimony. Katniss watches these events unfold with admiration. She sees a side of Finnick that many people never noticed. Behind his playful personality lies incredible courage. He willingly sacrifices his privacy and reputation for the greater good of the rebellion. The emotional cost of the broadcast is significant. Finnick must relive years of exploitation and manipulation. Yet his willingness to tell the truth demonstrates how much he has changed since the quarter quell. He is no longer simply a victor trying to survive. He has become a symbol of resistance. Meanwhile, the rebels monitor reactions across Panem. Reports suggest that the broadcasts are having a powerful effect. People are discussing Snow's crimes openly. Distrust toward the capital grows stronger. Every secret revealed weakens Snow's authority and strengthens the rebels' cause. Throughout the chapter, Suzanne Collins explores the theme of truth as a weapon. Physical battles can destroy armies, but information can destroy trust. Finnick's revelations strike directly at the foundation of Snow's regime by showing citizens that their leader is neither honorable nor invincible. The chapter also deepens Finnick's character. Readers gain a better understanding of the sacrifices he has endured since winning the Hunger Games. His fame brought privilege on the surface, but behind the scenes it came with enormous personal suffering. By sharing his experiences, he transforms that suffering into a powerful act of resistance. As the chapter concludes, the rebellion gains momentum. Snow's carefully constructed image has been damaged, and cracks are beginning to appear within the capital's control. Finnick's courage may have achieved something that armies alone could not, making people question the legitimacy of the regime. Key moments in the chapter include: Finnick agrees to participate in a major rebel propaganda broadcast. BT develops a strategy focused on exposing capital corruption. Finnick reveals secrets about powerful capital figures. Snow's use of blackmail and manipulation is exposed. Citizens across Panem begin questioning capital leadership. Katniss gains a deeper appreciation for Finnick's courage. The rebellion scores an important psychological victory. underscore 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 underscore. Differences between the book and the movie. The book provides more detailed explanations of the secrets Finnick reveals. Readers receive deeper insight into Snow's blackmail network. Finnick's emotional struggle before the broadcast is explored more thoroughly. The political impact of the revelations is described in greater detail in the novel. Katniss's internal reflections about Finnick are more extensive in the book. Chapter 16, Finnick's Secrets, demonstrates that truth can be one of the most powerful weapons in a war. By exposing Snow's corruption and manipulation, Finnick helps undermine the capital's authority while inspiring hope throughout Panem. His bravery transforms personal pain into a force for change, making this one of the most impactful chapters in Mockingjay. What secret revealed by Finnick shocked you the most? Let us know in the comments below, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. Join us next time for Chapter 17. Welcome back to Boundless Books. Today, we're diving into Chapter 17 of Mockingjay, titled Propaganda War. After Finnick Odair's shocking revelations about President Snow and the Capitol elite, the conflict between the rebels and the Capitol enters a new phase. This chapter focuses on the struggle for public opinion, where television broadcasts, interviews, and carefully crafted messages become as important as military victories. The chapter begins with District 13 analyzing the impact of Finnick's broadcast. Initial reports indicate that many citizens across Panem were deeply affected by the information he revealed. Confidence in the capital appears to be weakening, and rebel leaders see this as an opportunity to further strengthen support for the uprising. However, President Snow is not willing to surrender control of the narrative. The capital quickly launches its own counter-campaign. Through televised speeches and carefully edited broadcasts, Snow attempts to portray the rebels as dangerous extremists who are bringing chaos and destruction to Panem. Katniss watches these developments closely. She realizes that both sides are fighting to influence what ordinary citizens believe. While battles rage in the districts, another battle is being fought on television screens throughout the nation. One of the capital's most powerful tools remains Peter Mellark. Once again, he appears in a televised interview. Katniss immediately notices that he looks physically exhausted and emotionally strained. Despite his condition, Peeta continues urging both sides to seek peace rather than continue the war. His appearance creates mixed reactions among the rebels. Some believe he is speaking freely and genuinely wants to prevent further bloodshed. Others suspect that the capital is manipulating him or forcing him to deliver specific messages. For Katniss, the broadcast is deeply painful. She struggles to understand whether Peeta is acting of his own free will or whether he is being controlled. His words seem sincere, yet something feels wrong. The uncertainty adds to her emotional burden. Meanwhile, Plutarch, Heavensby and BT continue developing new strategies for rebel propaganda. They understand that maintaining public support is essential. Military victories alone will not secure success if the capital can convince citizens that the rebellion is unjustified. District 13 begins collecting footage from across Panem. Images of resistance, sacrifice, and unity are prepared for future broadcasts. The goal is to inspire hope while demonstrating that the rebellion represents ordinary people rather than a small group of revolutionaries. The chapter highlights how modern conflicts often involve information as much as physical force. Suzanne Collins shows that controlling public perception can influence the outcome of a war. Both Snow and the rebels recognize this reality and devote significant resources to shaping how events are interpreted. Katniss finds herself increasingly uncomfortable with certain aspects of propaganda. While she supports the rebellion, she notices similarities between the methods used by both sides. Messages are carefully crafted, emotions are manipulated, and events are presented in ways designed to influence viewers. This realization forces Katniss to think critically about truth and representation. She wants the rebellion to succeed, but she also values honesty. The tension between these goals becomes an important theme throughout the chapter. As the information war intensifies, citizens throughout Panem are exposed to competing narratives. Some support the capital, others support the rebels, and many remain uncertain about whom to trust. Every broadcast becomes a weapon aimed at winning hearts and minds. The emotional centerpiece of the chapter remains Peeta's interview. His fragile appearance worries Katniss and raises concerns among rebel leaders. Although he calls for peace, there are subtle hints that his situation may be more serious than it appears. By the end of the chapter, it becomes clear that the propaganda battle is far from over. Neither side has achieved a decisive advantage, and the struggle for public opinion continues. The rebels have scored important victories, but Snow remains a formidable opponent with significant influence. Suzanne Collins uses this chapter to explore the power of media, the ethics of persuasion, and the difficulty of finding truth during times of conflict. The war for Panem is no longer just a military struggle, it is also a battle for belief. Key moments in the chapter include: District 13 evaluates the success of Phoenix broadcast. President Snow launches a counter-propaganda campaign. Peeta appears in another Capitol television interview. Rebels debate whether Peeta is speaking freely. BT and Plutarch create new propaganda strategies. Katniss reflects on the ethics of information warfare. The struggle for public opinion becomes increasingly important. Differences between the book and the movie: the novel provides more detailed insight into Katniss's thoughts about propaganda. The political consequences of various broadcasts are explored more thoroughly in the book. Peeta's televised appearances receive additional context and analysis. The book spends more time examining how citizens react to competing narratives. Katniss's concerns about manipulation in truth are more prominent in the novel. Chapter 17, Propaganda War, demonstrates that wars are not fought only with weapons but also with words, images, and ideas. As the Capitol and the rebels compete to shape public opinion, Katniss begins to question the ethics of propaganda itself. Meanwhile, Peeta's troubling television appearance adds emotional weight to an already intense struggle. Do you think the rebels' broadcasts are more truthful than the Capitol's, or are both sides using similar tactics? Let us know in the comments below, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. Join us next time for Chapter 18 of Mockingjay. Welcome back to Boundless Books. Today, we're diving into Chapter 18 of Mockingjay, titled Snow's Roses. This chapter marks a turning point in Katniss's understanding of the war. As District 13 struggles to recover from the recent bombing, Katniss begins uncovering disturbing truths about President Snow's methods and the hidden dangers facing the rebellion. The mysterious scent of roses becomes a haunting reminder that Snow's influence extends farther than anyone realizes. Following the devastating bombing of District 13, life slowly begins returning to normal. The underground district remains tense as repairs continue and casualties are counted. Katniss is still recovering physically and emotionally from the attack. The experience has left her shaken, especially after witnessing the destruction and the vulnerability of a place she once considered safe. While resting in the hospital, Katniss learns more about the extent of the damage. Many people were injured, and some lost their lives despite District 13's preparations. The attack proves that the Capitol is willing to strike even heavily fortified targets. District 13's leadership uses the bombing as propaganda to strengthen support for the rebellion, but Katniss struggles to focus on political messaging when real people have suffered. As she recovers, Katniss notices a familiar scent lingering in the air: roses. The smell instantly reminds her of President Snow. Throughout her interactions with Snow, the scent of white roses has always accompanied him. The fragrance becomes associated with fear, manipulation, and the Capitol's power. The realization unsettles Katniss. Snow is nowhere near District 13, yet the scent triggers memories of every threat he has made. She recalls their private conversations in which Snow demonstrated a chilling understanding of human nature. Unlike many Capitol officials, Snow rarely lies outright. Instead, he uses truth as a weapon. Katniss begins reflecting on the possibility that not everything she believes about the war is accurate. She considers Snow's previous warnings and statements. Although he is undeniably cruel, she starts questioning whether he is responsible for every tragedy attributed to him. One event in particular dominates her thoughts: the destruction of District 12. Snow had ordered the bombing that obliterated her home, but some recent developments make Katniss wonder whether other actions blamed on the Capitol may have more complicated explanations. Meanwhile, the rebellion continues planning future military operations. Coin and the leadership of District 13 remain focused on defeating the Capitol at all costs. Their determination is admirable, but Katniss increasingly notices similarities between the strategies of both sides. Sacrifices are often discussed in terms of statistics rather than individual lives. This realization troubles her deeply. She has always viewed the conflict as a battle between good and evil. Yet the longer the war continues, the more she sees shades of gray. Both sides use propaganda. Both sides manipulate public opinion. Both sides ask ordinary people to risk everything. Katniss also spends time thinking about Peeta. His recent appearances in Capitol broadcasts continue haunting her. The rescue mission succeeded in bringing him back, but the damage inflicted by his hijacking remains severe. The Capitol's ability to alter memories demonstrates a frightening level of control over the human mind. The scent of roses becomes symbolic of this psychological warfare. Snow does not simply attack his enemies physically. He invades their thoughts, fears, and emotions. Even from a distance, he manages to influence Katniss's thinking. As she pieces together various clues, Katniss reaches an uncomfortable conclusion. Snow may be many terrible things, but he values control and predictability. Certain recent events do not fit his usual methods. This realization plants seeds of doubt that will become increasingly important later in the story. Toward the end of the chapter, Katniss recognizes that understanding her enemy requires honesty. If she allows hatred to blind her, she may overlook crucial truths. The war is becoming more complex than she imagined, and survival may depend on seeing beyond simple narratives. The chapter closes with Katniss caught between suspicion and uncertainty. The scent of roses lingers as a reminder that Snow remains a powerful force in the conflict. Yet the questions now forming in Katniss's mind suggest that the greatest dangers may not always come from the enemies she expects. Key moments in the chapter. District 13 continues recovering from the Capitol bombing. Katniss encounters the familiar scent associated with President Snow. She reflects on Snow's habit of using truth as a weapon. Doubts emerge about some assumptions regarding the war. Katniss notices troubling similarities between the Capitol and District 13. The psychological impact of Peeta's hijacking remains evident. Katniss begins questioning who is truly responsible for certain events. Differences between the book and the movie. 1. The book spends considerably more time exploring Katniss's internal thoughts about Snow and his motivations. 2. Katniss's growing doubts about the war's moral simplicity are more detailed in the novel. 3. The symbolism of Snow's roses is explored much more deeply in the book. 4. The movie condenses several reflective conversations and observations to maintain pacing. 5. Katniss's analysis of propaganda and manipulation receives greater emphasis in the novel. Chapter 18, Snow's Roses, is a psychologically rich chapter that shifts the focus from physical battles to battles of perception and truth. Katniss begins questioning long-held assumptions and realizes that understanding the enemy requires more than hatred. The recurring image of Snow's roses serves as a powerful symbol of fear, manipulation, and the lingering influence of the Capitol. As the rebellion moves forward, Katniss finds herself navigating an increasingly complicated moral landscape where truth is harder to find than ever. Welcome back to Boundless Books. Today, we're diving into Chapter 19 of Mockingjay, titled The Capitol Advance. As the rebellion against the Capitol enters its final and most dangerous phase, Katniss and the Star Squad begin their journey into the heart of enemy territory. What was intended as a propaganda mission suddenly becomes something far more deadly. The Capitol is no longer just a distant enemy, it is now directly in front of them, filled with hidden dangers and deadly traps. Following the destruction of District 2 and the weakening of President Snow's military defenses, rebel forces continue their advance toward the Capitol. Across Panem, districts are rising up against Capitol rule. And the rebellion appears closer to victory than ever before. Katniss Everdeen remains determined to fulfill her personal mission, killing President Snow. Although she is officially assigned to a propaganda unit known as the Star Squad, she understands that Coin and the rebel leadership have no intention of allowing her anywhere near the actual front lines. To them, Katniss is more valuable as a symbol than as a soldier. The Star Squad consists of several familiar faces, including Gale, Finnick, Cressida, Pollux, Castor, Jackson, Holmes, League 1, League 2, and surprisingly, Peeta Mellark. Peeta's presence shocks Katniss because he is still recovering from the Capitol's hijacking program. Though physically healthy, his memories and emotions remain unstable. The squad is transported to the outskirts of the capital. Their official assignment is simple: film propo and inspirational footage that can be broadcast throughout Panem to encourage the rebels. Since most active combat zones are too dangerous, they are expected to stay behind the main fighting forces. When they arrive, Katniss is stunned by the capital's appearance. The once glorious city is scarred by war. Buildings are damaged, streets are deserted, and fear hangs over everything. Rebel forces steadily push closer while capital defenses continue to crumble. The squad soon discovers that the capital has transformed the city into a giant Hunger Games arena. Pods, deadly traps designed by game makers, are hidden throughout the streets. These traps can unleash explosions, toxic gases, mutations, machine gun fire, or other horrifying attacks. Every street corner could be deadly. Boggs, the squad's commander, explains that special holographic maps called holodevices help identify pod locations. The rebels have captured enough information to navigate parts of the city safely, but many dangers remain unknown. Katniss begins to realize that the capital is using the same methods it once used against tributes in the Hunger Games. Citizens and soldiers alike are forced into a deadly game controlled by hidden traps. The irony is impossible to ignore. Meanwhile, Peeta struggles with his mental conditioning. He frequently questions whether his memories are real or fabricated. Sometimes he asks his companions, real or not real, to help distinguish truth from capital manipulation. Though his recovery continues, Katniss worries that he may never fully return to the person he once was. As the squad progresses through the city, they encounter increasing evidence of fierce fighting. Rebel soldiers move carefully through the streets while avoiding known pods. The atmosphere grows increasingly tense because everyone understands that death could come at any moment. A particularly important conversation occurs between Boggs and Katniss. He privately reveals his concerns about President Coin. Boggs believes Coin may view Katniss as a political threat once the war ends. He suggests that Coin's motives may not be entirely noble and warns Katniss to be cautious about trusting her completely. This revelation deeply unsettles Katniss. Throughout the rebellion, she has focused almost entirely on defeating Snow. Now she begins to wonder whether the new leadership could become just as dangerous in different ways. As they continue forward, the squad captures footage showing rebel victories and the capital's weakening defenses. However, beneath the apparent success lies growing uncertainty. The capital's traps ensure that every step forward carries enormous risk. By the end of the chapter, the Star Squad is moving deeper into the capital than originally intended. The mission that began as a propaganda exercise is slowly evolving into a genuine military operation. Katniss senses that the final confrontation with Snow is approaching, but she also understands that reaching him may require surviving challenges even deadlier than the Hunger Games themselves. The chapter closes with a powerful sense of anticipation. The rebels are advancing, but the capital has one final arena waiting for them. Key moments in the chapter: the Star Squad arrives in the capital. Katniss observes the war-damaged city. The capital is revealed to be filled with deadly pods. Boggs explains the holo map system. Peeta continues his recovery using real or not real. Boggs warns Katniss about President Coin's ambitions. The squad advances deeper into dangerous territory. The capital becomes a giant version of the Hunger Games arena. Differences between the book and the movie. 1. The book provides much more detail about the pod system and how the capital transformed the city into a giant arena. 2. Katniss's internal thoughts regarding Coin and Boggs's warning receive greater attention in the novel. 3. Peeta's psychological struggles and real or not real interactions are explored more deeply in the book. 4. The novel spends more time explaining the squad's role as a propaganda team before events escalate. 5. The capital's atmosphere feels more tense and strategic in the book through Katniss's narration. Chapter 19 marks the beginning of the rebellion's final march into the capital. What appears to be a straightforward advance quickly reveals itself as a deadly game engineered by the capital's game makers. As Katniss and the Star Squad move closer to President Snow, they face hidden traps, growing political uncertainty, and the realization that victory may not bring the peace they expected. The road ahead is filled with danger, and the capital's final arena has only just begun. Welcome back to Boundless Books. Today, we're diving into Chapter 20 of Mockingjay, titled Tunnels of the Capitol. As Katniss and the Star Squad continue their dangerous journey through the Capitol, they find themselves trapped in a deadly underground maze. The Capitol's hidden defenses transform the tunnels into a horrifying battlefield where every step could be their last. This chapter combines intense action, fear, loss, and the growing realization that President Snow has turned the entire city into one giant Hunger Games. After escaping the deadly pot attack in the streets above, Katniss and the remaining members of the Star Squad descend into the Capitol's underground sewer system. Their goal is to avoid the heavily trapped streets and continue moving toward Snow's mansion. Although the tunnels seem like a safer route at first, they quickly discover that danger awaits below as well. The underground tunnels are dark, damp, and suffocating. The air is filled with foul smells, and the constant sound of rushing water echoes through the narrow passages. The squad moves cautiously, aware that the Capitol may have designed traps beneath the city just as deadly as those on the surface. As they travel deeper into the tunnels, the atmosphere becomes increasingly tense. Everyone is exhausted, both physically and emotionally. The loss of their friends and the constant threat of death weigh heavily on the group. Katniss struggles to stay focused while dealing with her growing concern about Peeta's unstable condition. Suddenly, the squad encounters one of the Capitol's most terrifying creations, a group of genetically engineered creatures known as mutts. These creatures resemble pale, human-like lizards with extraordinary speed, strength, and intelligence. Their white skin glows eerily in the darkness, and their sharp claws and teeth make them deadly predators. The mutts attack without warning. The tunnels erupt into chaos as the creatures swarm the squad from multiple directions. The narrow passageways leave little room for escape, forcing the rebels into a desperate running battle. The squad begins fighting for survival. Guns blaze in the darkness while the mutts relentlessly pursue them. The creatures seem almost unstoppable, adapting quickly to the rebels' tactics and continuing their pursuit despite heavy losses. Finnick Odair proves once again why he is one of the Capitol's most celebrated victors. Armed with his trident and extraordinary combat skills, he fights courageously to protect his friends. He repeatedly places himself between the mutts and the rest of the squad, buying valuable time for the others to escape. As the attack intensifies, the group realizes that simply fighting is not enough. They must keep moving. Every moment spent standing still allows the mutts to close the distance. The squad races through the tunnels, desperately searching for an exit while battling wave after wave of attackers. The relentless chase pushes everyone to their limits. Katniss experiences a mixture of terror and determination. She understands that failure means certain death, yet she refuses to give up. The horrors of the Hunger Games have prepared her for survival, but even she struggles against the overwhelming nightmare unfolding around them. During the desperate retreat, tragedy strikes. Finnick becomes separated from the group as mutts swarm him from all sides. Katniss watches in horror as he is overwhelmed by the creatures. Despite his bravery and skill, the sheer number of mutts proves impossible to overcome. Knowing there is no way to save him and unwilling to let him suffer, Katniss activates the self-destruct mechanism known as the Hollow. The resulting explosion destroys the mutts surrounding Finnick, ending both their attack and Finnick's life. Finnick's death devastates the squad. For Katniss, the loss is especially painful. Finnick had become one of her closest allies and one of the few people who truly understood the trauma of surviving the Hunger Games. His recent marriage to Annie and dreams of a peaceful future make his death even more heartbreaking. Despite their grief, the survivors have no choice but to continue. The mutts remain in pursuit, and stopping to mourn would mean joining Finnick in death. The chapter ends with the squad still racing through the tunnels, carrying the emotional weight of Finnick's sacrifice while desperately searching for a way out. The Capitol's underground maze has claimed another beloved victor, proving once again that in war, even heroes are not guaranteed a happy ending. Key moments in the chapter: the Star Squad enters the Capitol's sewer tunnels. The group encounters terrifying lizard mutts. A brutal underground chase begins. Finnick fights heroically to protect the squad. The mutts overwhelm Finnick. Katniss detonates the Hollow to prevent Finnick's suffering. Finnick Odair dies. The remaining squad members continue their desperate escape. Differences between the book and the movie. 1. The movie greatly expands the visual horror of the sewer chase, making the mutts resemble terrifying reptilian monsters. 2. Finnick's final battle is longer and more action-packed in the film adaptation. 3. The book focuses more heavily on Katniss's internal emotions and shock during Finnick's death. 4. The tunnels and sewer environment receive more detailed descriptions in the novel. 5. The movie emphasizes suspense and horror elements, while the book balances action with emotional reflection. Chapter 20, Tunnels of the Capitol, is one of the most intense and heartbreaking chapters in Mockingjay. The terrifying mud attack transforms the Capitol's tunnels into a deadly nightmare, while Finnick's heroic sacrifice delivers one of the novel's most emotional moments. His death serves as a painful reminder that war spares no one. Welcome back to Boundless Books. Today, we're diving into Chapter 21 of Mockingjay, the third book in the Hunger Games trilogy by Suzanne Collins, titled The Losses Mount. As Katniss and the Star Squad continue their dangerous mission through the Capitol, the cost of war becomes increasingly devastating. This chapter is filled with tension, grief, and shocking losses that remind us that victory in war often comes at a terrible price. After narrowly escaping the mutts and the sewer tunnels, Katniss and the remaining members of the Star Squad emerge exhausted and traumatized. The squad has suffered significant casualties, and the emotional strain on everyone is evident. The Capitol, with its relentless traps and pods, continues to turn every street into a battlefield. The survivors seek refuge in a small shop where they attempt to regroup. Among those still alive are Katniss, Gale, Peeta, Finnick, Cressida, Pollux, Castor, and a few others. The group is physically battered and emotionally shattered by the losses they have already endured. Sleep comes fitfully, interrupted by nightmares and the constant fear of discovery. As the squad resumes its journey toward President Snow's mansion, they are forced to travel cautiously through abandoned buildings and deserted streets. The once glorious Capitol now resembles a war zone. Fires rage in the distance, buildings lie in ruins, and the sounds of explosions echo through the city. Throughout their journey, Katniss observes Peeta carefully. Although he has made considerable progress since being rescued from the Capitol, his hijacking continues to affect him. He still struggles to distinguish reality from the false memories implanted by the Capitol. However, Peeta increasingly relies on the squad's real or not real game, demonstrating both his vulnerability and determination to recover. The squad eventually encounters a group of Capitol civilians fleeing toward President Snow's mansion, believing it to be a place of safety. Snow has publicly announced that civilians may seek refuge there from the ongoing battle. Katniss realizes that Snow may be using these civilians as human shields, forcing the rebels to hesitate before launching an attack. Among the refugees are many wealthy Capitol citizens, carrying whatever possessions they could save. Katniss notices frightened children, elderly people, and families desperately seeking protection. For perhaps the first time, she truly sees ordinary Capitol residents as victims of the war rather than as privileged enemies. Many are terrified, confused, and caught in a conflict they did not create. As the squad moves among the refugees, they attempt to blend into the crowd. Their disguises and exhaustion help them avoid immediate suspicion. Yet the atmosphere is tense. Rebel forces are closing in, and everyone senses that the final confrontation is near. Suddenly, Capitol hovercraft appear overhead. Initially, the civilians believe the aircraft are coming to evacuate them or provide aid. Instead, silver parachutes begin descending from the sky. Katniss instantly recognizes the parachutes. They resemble the gifts traditionally sent to tributes during the Hunger Games. Before she can fully process what is happening, the parachutes explode. The first wave of explosions devastates the crowd, killing and injuring countless civilians, including many children. Chaos erupts as survivors scream and flee in terror. Medical personnel rush forward to aid the wounded. Then, as rescuers gather among the injured, a second wave of explosions detonates. The tactic is horrifyingly familiar, a double explosion strategy designed specifically to kill first responders. Katniss watches in horror as medics and civilians alike are consumed by the blasts. Among those rushing to help is Katniss's beloved sister, Prim. Katniss catches a brief glimpse of Prim in her medic uniform just moments before the second explosion engulfs her in flames. The sight is devastating. Katniss screams Prim's name, but the force of the explosion overwhelms her. She is thrown backward, suffering severe burns and injuries. The world dissolves into fire, smoke, and darkness as she loses consciousness. The chapter ends on one of the most heartbreaking moments in the entire series. Katniss, who volunteered for the Hunger Games years earlier solely to save Prim, witnesses what appears to be her sister's death in the final days of the war. The tragedy underscores one of the novel's central themes: war spares no one, and even those fighting for justice may suffer unbearable losses. Key moments in the chapter: the Star Squad recovers after escaping the sewer mutts. Katniss and her companions continue advancing through the ruined capital. Refugees gather outside President Snow's mansion. Katniss realizes Capitol civilians are being used as human shields. Silver parachutes descend from hovercraft. The parachutes explode, killing civilians and medics. Katniss sees Prim moments before the second explosion. Katniss is injured and loses consciousness. Differences between the book and the movie. 1. In the book, Katniss's observations about Capitol civilians and her reflections on war are explored in much greater depth. 2. The novel provides more detailed descriptions of the refugee crowd and the emotional atmosphere before the bombing. 3. Katniss's internal realization about the similarity between the parachutes and Hunger Games sponsor gifts is more pronounced in the book. 4. The movie visually dramatizes the explosion sequence, while the book emphasizes Katniss's emotional shock and confusion. Chapter 21, The Losses Mount, marks one of the most tragic turning points in Mockingjay. The devastating bombing outside Snow's mansion changes everything for Katniss. The apparent loss of Prim, the very person Katniss sought to protect from the beginning, forces readers to confront the true cost of war. This heartbreaking chapter sets the stage. Welcome back to Boundless Books. Today, we're diving into Chapter 22 of Mockingjay, the third book in the Hunger Games trilogy by Suzanne Collins, titled Prim's Last Mission. This chapter is one of the most emotional and revealing chapters in the entire series. As Katniss awakens from the devastating explosion outside Snow's mansion, she must confront an unbearable truth while the war reaches its conclusion. Grief, anger, and shocking revelations dominate this heartbreaking chapter. Chapter 22 opens with Katniss regaining consciousness after the horrific bombing outside President Snow's mansion. She awakens in a medical facility, badly injured and suffering from severe burns. Her body is in tremendous pain. But her physical injuries pale in comparison to the emotional trauma she has endured. At first, Katniss is disoriented. Her memories of the explosion are fragmented, and she struggles to piece together exactly what happened. Gradually, flashes of the event return to her: the frightened Capitol children, the silver parachutes, the medics rushing forward, and finally, the sight of Prim running toward the wounded. Desperately, Katniss asks about her sister. No one answers directly. Eventually, Katniss learns the devastating truth: Prim is dead. The revelation shatters Katniss completely. Throughout the entire trilogy, Katniss's primary motivation has been protecting Prim. She volunteered for the Hunger Games in the very first book to save her younger sister. Every sacrifice, every risk, and every painful decision she made stemmed from her determination to keep Prim safe. Now, despite surviving 2 Hunger Games and helping lead a revolution, Katniss has failed in the one mission that mattered most to her. Consumed by grief, Katniss withdraws from the world around her. She barely speaks, refusing visitors and ignoring attempts by doctors and friends to comfort her. She feels numb, unable to imagine life without Prim. As Katniss slowly recovers physically, she learns that the capital has officially fallen. Rebel forces have successfully taken control, and President Snow has been captured. The war that claimed countless lives has finally ended, yet Katniss feels no sense of victory. The triumph of the rebellion means little to her in the wake of Prim's death. Instead, she becomes increasingly obsessed with understanding why Prim was present at the bombing site in the first place. Prim was only 13 years old and had little field experience as a medic. Katniss cannot understand why she was sent into such a dangerous situation. The question haunts her. During this period, Katniss is visited by President Snow. Surprisingly calm despite his imprisonment, Snow speaks candidly with her. He insists that he did not order the bombing that killed the Capitol children and Prim. Snow points out that the attack served no strategic purpose for him. The war was already lost, and killing Capitol children would only further turn public opinion against him. Instead, he suggests that the bombing may have been orchestrated by rebel leaders, specifically President Coin. Snow proposes a horrifying possibility: the rebels may have intentionally sacrificed Capitol children and medics to create outrage against the Capitol and secure public support for the new regime. Katniss is stunned as she reflects on Snow's words. Troubling details begin to emerge. The silver parachutes resembled those designed by District 13. Furthermore, Katniss remembers conversations involving Gale and BT about double exploding bombs designed to target rescuers. The realization is devastating. Katniss begins to suspect that the bombs responsible for Prim's death may have been based on Gale's designs and authorized by Coin herself. The possibility forces Katniss to re-evaluate everything she thought she knew about the rebellion. Throughout the war, Coin presented herself as a moral alternative to Snow. However, Katniss increasingly sees disturbing similarities between the two leaders. Both appear willing to sacrifice innocent lives for political gain. Meanwhile, Katniss continues to struggle with overwhelming grief. Buttercup, Prim's beloved cat, eventually appears in her hospital room after somehow surviving the destruction. At first, Katniss reacts angrily, blaming the cat for surviving when Prim did not. Yet her outburst finally allows her to express the immense sorrow she has been suppressing. For the first time since learning of Prim's death, Katniss truly breaks down and mourns. The chapter concludes with Katniss emotionally devastated but increasingly determined to uncover the truth behind Prim's final mission and the bombing that claimed her life. Her faith in the new government is deeply shaken, setting the stage for the series' final moral confrontation. Key moments in the chapter: Katniss awakens in the hospital after the explosion. Katniss learns that Prim has died. The capital officially falls to rebel forces. Katniss struggles with overwhelming grief and isolation. President Snow claims he did not order the bombing. Katniss suspects President Coin's involvement. Katniss realizes the bombs resemble designs discussed by Gale and BT. Buttercup's return finally allows Katniss to grieve openly. Differences between the book and the movie. 1. The book explores Katniss's grief and emotional numbness in far greater depth than the film. 2. Katniss's internal reflections regarding Coin and Snow are much more detailed in the novel. 3. The conversation between Katniss and Snow contains additional nuance and political insight in the book. 4. The movie condenses Katniss's hospital recovery and focuses more on visual storytelling than internal monologue. 5. Buttercup's reunion scene is emotionally powerful in both versions, but Katniss's thoughts are more extensively explored in the novel. Chapter 22, Prim's Last Mission, is one of the most heartbreaking chapters in Mockingjay. Prim's death devastates Katniss and fundamentally changes her perspective on the war and its leaders. As shocking truths emerge about the bombing, Katniss begins to question whether the new regime is truly different from the old one. This chapter masterfully explores grief, moral ambiguity, and the tragic cost of revolution. Welcome back to Boundless Books. Today, we're diving into Chapter 23 of Mockingjay, titled Assassination Day. This chapter marks the climax of Katniss Everdeen's journey as she finally confronts President Snow, only to discover that the truth behind Panem's suffering may be far more complicated than she ever imagined. As the chapter opens, Katniss slowly recovers from the devastating explosion that killed Prim. The physical wounds are severe, but the emotional scars run even deeper. Prim's death has shattered Katniss completely. She struggles to comprehend how her beloved sister, whom she had spent years protecting, could have been sent to the front lines of an active war zone. Panem celebrates the capital's defeat, but Katniss remains isolated in grief. She spends much of her time reflecting on Prim's death and trying to understand why Coin allowed such a young medic to be present during the final assault. Doubts begin to grow in Katniss's mind. Eventually, she receives an unexpected visit from President Snow. Imprisoned and awaiting execution, Snow requests a final conversation with Katniss. During their discussion, Snow insists that he did not order the parachute bombs that killed the capital children and Prim. Instead, he suggests that President Coin orchestrated the attack to turn public opinion against him and secure her own rise to power. Snow's revelation forces Katniss to reconsider everything she believes. She remembers Gale's earlier military designs involving a two-stage explosive trap, one that wounded victims and then targeted rescuers. The attack that killed Prim closely resembles this strategy. Katniss realizes with horror that Coin may have sacrificed innocent lives, including Prim's, to gain absolute control. Soon afterward, Coin announces plans for a symbolic final Hunger Games using capital children as participants. The proposal shocks Katniss. Coin argues that this final games would provide justice for years of suffering inflicted by the Capitol. The surviving victors are asked to vote. Johanna and Enoberia support the idea out of bitterness and revenge. Peeta strongly opposes it, insisting that humanity must break free from the cycle of violence. Haymitch surprises Katniss by agreeing, but only if she supports it as well. Katniss faces a critical decision. Realizing that Coin has become dangerously similar to Snow, Katniss votes in favor of the symbolic games, not because she truly supports it, but because she needs Coin to trust her completely. Preparations begin for Snow's public execution. Katniss is selected to carry out the sentence. A role befitting the Mockingjay. Citizens gather in huge numbers as Snow is brought before the crowd. Standing with her bow drawn, Katniss reflects on everything she has endured: the games, Rue's death, Peeta's suffering, Finnick's sacrifice, and most painfully, Prim's death. She sees Snow smiling knowingly. In that instant, Katniss understands that killing Snow will change nothing. Coin will simply replace one tyranny with another. As Katniss takes aim, the entire nation watches. Instead of firing at Snow, she raises her bow slightly and releases the arrow directly into President Coin's heart. Coin dies instantly. Chaos erupts across the square. Snow begins laughing uncontrollably, perhaps amused that his final enemy has also fallen. Amid the confusion, Snow himself dies, either from choking on blood or being crushed by the panicked crowd. Katniss is immediately arrested. Many believe she has lost her mind. Yet, deep down, Katniss knows she has made the only choice that could prevent another dictatorship from taking root. The chapter ends with Katniss imprisoned once again, awaiting judgment for assassinating President Coin. Though uncertain about her future, she feels a strange sense of peace, knowing she acted according to her conscience. Key moments in the chapter: Katniss learns from Snow that Coin may have orchestrated the parachute bombing. Coin proposes a final Hunger Games using Capitol children. Katniss realizes Coin is becoming another tyrant. Katniss publicly assassinates President Coin instead of Snow. Snow dies during the ensuing chaos. Katniss is arrested for treason. Differences between the book and the movie. 1. The film places greater emphasis on visual spectacle during Snow's execution ceremony. 2. Katniss's internal struggle regarding Coin's guilt is explored in far more detail in the novel. 3. Snow's final conversation with Katniss contains additional nuances in the book, strengthening her suspicions about Coin. 4. The novel spends more time describing Katniss's grief and emotional numbness following Prim's death. Chapter 23 serves as the emotional and political climax of Mockingjay. Katniss's decision to assassinate Coin demonstrates her ultimate rejection of tyranny, regardless of who wields power. The chapter powerfully explores themes of justice, revenge, and the dangerous cycle of violence, proving that true freedom requires more than simply replacing one ruler with another. Welcome back to Boundless Books. Today, we're diving into Chapter 24 of Mockingjay, titled The Trial. Following the shocking events of President Coin's assassination, this chapter explores the aftermath of Katniss Everdeen's fateful decision and her struggle to find meaning in a world finally at peace. The chapter begins with Katniss confined to a luxurious room in the Capitol, but despite its comfort, she feels like a prisoner once again. After assassinating President Coin during President Snow's public execution, Katniss expects to face immediate punishment. Instead, she is kept under guard while the new leaders of Panem decide her fate. Katniss spends her days in a state of emotional numbness. The trauma of the war, Finnick's death, and especially Prim's loss continue to haunt her. She finds herself unable to eat, sleep properly, or engage with the world around her. Her memories of Prim are particularly painful. Katniss cannot stop replaying the moment of the explosion and wondering whether she could have somehow saved her sister. During this period, Katniss learns that President Coin's death has dramatically altered Panem's political future. Rather than allowing another authoritarian leader to seize control, the rebels decide to establish a republic. Free elections are planned, and for the first time in generations, the citizens of Panem will choose their own government. Katniss eventually meets with her defense team, including Plutarch Heavensbee and Paylor. They explain that many influential figures believe Katniss acted while mentally unstable due to years of trauma, repeated Hunger Games experiences, and the recent loss of Prim. Katniss herself does not strongly defend her actions. She knows exactly why she killed Coin, yet she is too exhausted and grief-stricken to explain herself. As discussions continue, Katniss reflects on President Snow's final words and her growing realization that Coin intended to perpetuate the same cycle of oppression that Snow had maintained for decades. Katniss understands that by killing Coin, she may have prevented another dictatorship from emerging. Eventually, Panem's leaders conclude that Katniss should not be subjected to a traditional public trial. Instead, she is declared psychologically unfit due to severe emotional trauma. This decision spares her from execution or imprisonment. Soon afterward, Commander Paylor is elected as Panem's new president. Unlike both Snow and Coin, Paylor is widely respected for her integrity and compassion. Her election symbolizes hope for a more democratic and just future. Although legally free, Katniss feels disconnected from the celebrations surrounding Panem's rebirth. The capital no longer feels like home, and District 12, the place she once desperately wanted to escape, now seems to be the only place where she belongs. Arrangements are made for Katniss to return to District 12. Before leaving, Haymitch visits her. He reveals that he, too, will be returning home. Their shared experiences have created an unspoken bond between them. Neither of them knows what the future holds, but both understand that healing will take time. As Katniss prepares to leave the capital, she realizes that the war is finally over. The capital has fallen, Snow and Coin are dead, and Panem stands on the threshold of a new era. Yet Katniss does not feel victorious. The cost of freedom has been enormous, and the wounds left by war cannot be erased overnight. The chapter ends with Katniss beginning her journey back to District 12, uncertain about her future but hopeful that, away from politics and violence, she might someday find peace. Key moments in the chapter: Katniss remains confined following Coin's assassination. Panem decides to establish a democratic republic. Katniss is declared psychologically unfit to stand trial. Commander Paylor is elected as Panem's new president. Haymitch prepares to return to District 12 with Katniss. Katniss leaves the capital to begin a new chapter of her life. Differences between the book and the movie. 1. The novel provides much deeper insight into Katniss's emotional numbness and grief following Prim's death. 2. Katniss's confinement and discussions regarding her mental state are explored in greater detail in the book. 3. The movie condenses much of the political transition occurring after Coin's death. 4. Commander Paylor's rise to leadership receives more explanation in the novel. Chapter 24, The Trial, serves as a quiet yet powerful transition from war to peace. While Panem begins rebuilding itself, Katniss must confront the emotional aftermath of everything she has endured. The chapter emphasizes that surviving war is only the beginning. The true challenge lies in learning how to live afterward. Welcome back to Boundless Books. Today, we're diving into Chapter 25 of Mockingjay, titled A New Beginning. This final chapter brings Suzanne Collins' epic trilogy to a deeply emotional and reflective close. After years of suffering, loss, and war, Katniss Everdeen must learn how to live in a world finally free from tyranny. The chapter begins after Katniss has spent some time recovering from the injuries she sustained following her assassination of President Coin. Although she is declared mentally fit after her trial, Katniss remains emotionally shattered. The capital authorities eventually decide to send her back to District 12 rather than punish her, recognizing the immense trauma she has endured. Returning to District 12 is both comforting and painful. The district remains mostly empty and scarred from the destruction inflicted by the capital. The once bustling scene is gone, leaving behind memories of family, friends, and a life that can never truly be restored. Katniss moves back into the Victor's village, occupying the house that feels far too large and lonely. For a long time, Katniss isolates herself. Haunted by memories of Prim, Finnick, Boggs, and countless others who died during the war, she struggles with depression and grief. She spends her days wandering through the remains of District 12, hunting occasionally, and trying to avoid thinking about everything she has lost. One day, Peeta Mellark unexpectedly arrives in District 12. Like Katniss, Peeta has been sent home to rebuild his life. His presence initially feels awkward because the effects of the capital's hijacking still linger. Although Peeta remembers many things, some memories remain confused or uncertain. Nevertheless, he is determined to heal. Peeta begins planting primroses around Katniss's house as a tribute to Prim. This simple but powerful gesture touches Katniss deeply. The flowers become a symbol of remembrance, love, and renewal. Slowly, Peeta's kindness begins breaking through the emotional barriers Katniss has built around herself. Together, Katniss and Peeta establish a quiet routine. They hunt, bake, plant, and slowly rebuild both their homes and themselves. Neither speaks much about the horrors they experienced, yet they understand one another in ways no one else possibly could. Their shared trauma creates a bond stronger than words. Meanwhile, District 12 gradually begins to repopulate. New families arrive, businesses reopen, and life slowly returns. Greasy Acai once again provides meals, while small signs of civilization begin appearing throughout the district. Although the scars of war remain visible, hope begins to take root. Katniss still experiences nightmares. Whenever terrifying memories resurface, Peeta comforts her, reminding her that they are safe. In return, Katniss helps Peeta distinguish between real memories and those planted by the Capitol. Together, they continue their healing process. As years pass, Katniss finally acknowledges her feelings for Peeta. She realizes that Gale represented fire, passion, and rebellion, but Peeta symbolizes hope, peace, and healing. After everything they endured, Katniss understands that what she truly needs is not destruction, but renewal. Eventually, Katniss and Peeta marry and have 2 children. Katniss had long resisted the idea of bringing children into a world shaped by the Hunger Games. But the absence of the games and the promise of a better future gradually change her mind. Even years later, Katniss continues to carry emotional scars. She admits that there are still moments when grief overwhelms her. To cope, she and Peeta create a mental game in which they list every act of kindness they can remember. This practice helps Katniss focus on the goodness that still exists in humanity. The novel concludes with Katniss reflecting on her children playing in a peaceful meadow, a future that once seemed impossible. Though the pain of the past never fully disappears, Katniss finally accepts that life can continue. There are still moments of joy, love, and hope worth fighting for. Key moments in the chapter. Katniss returns permanently to District 12. Peeta arrives and begins rebuilding his life alongside Katniss. Peeta plants primroses in memory of Prim. District 12 slowly starts recovering and repopulating. Katniss realizes her love for Peeta. Katniss and Peeta eventually marry and have children. The trilogy ends with hope and healing replacing fear and oppression. Differences between the book and the movie. The book provides far more detail about Katniss's prolonged depression and emotional recovery. Katniss's reflections on Gale and Peeta are explored much more deeply in the novel. The mental exercise of listing acts of kindness receives greater emphasis in the book. The epilogue in the novel contains more introspective narration from Katniss regarding motherhood and trauma. The gradual rebuilding of District 12 is described in significantly greater detail in the book. A New Beginning serves as a poignant and powerful conclusion to Mockingjay and the Hunger Games trilogy. Suzanne Collins reminds readers that surviving war is only the beginning. True courage lies in healing, remembering, and choosing hope despite unimaginable loss. Katniss and Peeta's journey demonstrates that while scars may remain forever, love and compassion can help create a better future.